Really, in all fashion, a perfect sports weekend and a perfect weekend in general in Indianapolis. I mean, it was a lot of the sports we're talking about were outside of here, but the weather was absolutely spectacular. The closing ceremonies for the Olympics and passing the torch, literally, figuratively, whichever way you look at it, back to the United States now as the attention shifts to Los Angeles in 2028. Great moments in the gold medal game, both for the men and the women in basketball. And then, of course, the much anticipated return of the National Football League, albeit on a preseason basis. But nonetheless, the Colts back in Lucas Oil Stadium. The roof's broken. Is that right? You knew I was going to leave with
Malfunction.
that.
I thought that would be at the top. But hey, window worked. So that was something, right? Got the window going, just the malfunction on the roof.
So, no, wait a minute. They
saved somebody a coin toss flip there. It's big.
You guys have been to San Diego, right?
We have.
This was indeed San Diego. Saturday was San Diego all the way through and through. I mean,
yeah,
could not have been more perfect, right? It's
wonderful.
Sunday was tremendous as well, so a perfect day to make sure that you can't open anything up. Perfect day for it. But the Colts get the win, or excuse me, the Broncos get the win, but the Colts get the win in the fact that Anthony Richardson played. We got to see him, in fact, out there. Reality is, Jimmy, that, again, what did I say on Friday? The thing you wanted to see is to make sure that he came out unscathed. He got to see full speed in front of him, actual opponent, throw a couple passes, knock off a little bit of rust, and then go back to the sidelines and put on, like, the big coat that he had to put on because, they were indoors after all, right? But your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I said this last week, and I tried, Jake. I really did. I tried to get excited about the preseason opener. A lot of storylines at place. Rookies getting their first piece of the action. We had to see some Leatu Latu in true form. That was cool. But the Anthony Richardson return to the field. You knew he was going to get 2 series. I tried to get excited about it with the same mentality of it doesn't really matter as long as he stays healthy and there's stuff you can clearly work on, which there was, then you're good. But all this did for me, and the Colts were really the only preseason. I watched a couple Chief highlights like you would expect, but in terms of watching a majority of a preseason game, the Colts were the only one that I tuned into because it's the preseason. And all it did that I was left with this feeling of, man, I just need week 1 to get here. Because you can't properly evaluate where Anthony Richardson is at going into his de facto rookie campaign on 2 series. And you can't accurately predict where Anthony Richardson's going to be based on just what you've seen in camp, other than the fact that in camp he looked comfortable. I thought he looked a little antsy yesterday, but again, I'll chalk most of that up to the rust. Where I shift to now, and tell me if you're the same way, is whatever we get out of joint practices is the last real nugget of answers we're going to have about him prior to week 1. Because joint practices have really become the area where coaches appear to show more. They want more out of those. I would argue if you did a poll around the National Football League, coaches would tell you at this stage of what the preseason and build up to week 1 is, there is few things as valuable as joint practices because of just it simulates more of what a real game is, I think, than what you actually get out of a preseason game. So I was just left wanting to see more with the frustrated feeling of knowing I was never going to get that because you were told what you were going to get at the beginning,
I guess
which
the
was
question
2 series.
is this. Did we not see everything that we needed to see out of Anthony Richardson because it's not there, or because Joe Montana can't get anything going in 2 drives?
Yeah, I mean, I would lean more towards that, especially as quick as the first drive was, and you could say that was self-inflicted. I read conflicting stuff. Some had said online that it was an overthrow. Those that were there, I should say, that were in the press box said it was an overthrow. I'll trust them. It looked like miscommunication on that first drive with Kylan Granson, and then the second time, he just threw behind Kylan Granson, and it leads to a tackle before the stick. So if you're being nitpicky, those were either, again, a miscommunication between both or Richardson's fault in both instances, both fixable. Both, as I think Kevin pointed this out on 107.5 The Fan, he looked like a guy that hadn't played football in about a year. It's fine. I would lean more towards the answer your question. Few could get something of substance done in just 2 drives.
Do we have a sounder for Jake Query bad analogies, Eddie? Because I'm about to give one.
I have to check the end of your budget. I don't know if we have that.
It almost pains me that I'm using this analogy because it's one that I staved forever.
This hurts you to bring this one out?
A little bit.
All right.
Forever, I didn't take up the game of golf, partially because, as I've said before, of my age, most of my friends have been playing for 20 years, so I'm like, well, who's going to want to play with a hack that slows them up?
We do have a sounder, Jake.
Okay.
I didn't know if you wanted it now or...
Yeah, that would be
okay.
When I say okay. Okay, thank you. That's perfect. That's perfect. It comes from the vacuum of the depths of my brain.
Well played.
So I don't want to be that guy that like constantly starts talking golf because that's what golf people do, and it drove me nuts, and that's why. However, the one thing that I can use as an analogy here, because I think it relates to Anthony Richardson, I really do, is as I'm learning the game of golf, the one thing that is to me, and I think for most golfers, the trick when learning the game, the hardest thing to learn is pitching from like 50 yards out. And the reason why is because it's one thing to learn the motion of getting the pitch to get so that the golf ball gets airborne and gets where you want to go. Then the second part of that is to learn, once you have figured out how to get the ball in the air up onto the green, then the second part, which might be the harder part, is the touch. And not how do I get it? I know that I need to get it 50 yards, but like if I hit this, how do I know it's not going to go 110 yards or 30 yards or whatever? So learning that touch then becomes the second thing. Anthony Richardson as a pro quarterback and a guy that did not throw a lot of passes or have a lot of completed passes in college at Florida, but Anthony Richardson now is a pro to me. I think his timing is getting there in terms of when and understanding when and where to throw the ball, but the touch is still the thing that it seems like he needs to master. And I'm not saying that as a knock on him. I mean, this is something that takes some of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, probably, Brett Favre never necessarily had touch, but when he is rolling out in particular, or when he is needing to, one of the great things about him is he has the ability to throw across his body or to stop on a dime and alter the trajectory of a play. But when he is doing that oftentimes in terms of his throw, the idea is there. The execution looks to be there. But then the throw itself is either very low, as we saw yesterday, one in the dirt, or he goes a little bit high. Learning that touch of accuracy is clearly the thing that he has yet to master from the outside here. So, and does that happen? Does that come with time? Does it never come? That's the one thing we just don't know. There are quarterbacks in the NFL that you have seen that you say, it's like when Hunter Perea was at Indiana, and I remember somebody said he's going to be the next George McGinnis as soon as he learns how to catch the basketball. Well, okay. I think Richardson has all the tools for sure, but to me, just softness of touch and understanding of when to float it in, when to rifle it in, those are the things that, to me, seem to be still not natural.
And to that end, you're not going to get an answer from 2 series yesterday. You're just not.
Correct.
Like, in all honesty, let's say they played him the whole game, which no one was asking for that. I'm certainly not asking for that. But let's say they played him the entirety of that preseason game. Okay, at some point, you're going to be going against second and third unit guys. You're still not going to have a complete answer. If anything, you might have fool's gold on it because all of a sudden in the third quarter, he threw for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. Oh, well, that's because he was going up against the second or third unit for Denver defensively. Right. So I told you the bar was low. I wanted him to stay healthy. And as a unit, by the way, I will give the Colts credit, at least in that first 2 series. They got blitzed in that opening series, and they did not respond to it well. They didn't pick it up properly, and I can't remember if it was a rush throw or if it was a low throw, but it led to an incompletion. And in the second series, the same look happened, or another blitz came, and they picked it up, and Anthony Richardson had time. I might be mixing up plays here. In that series, of course, the Mo Cox catch and run happened. So, like, there were some bright spots. There were some negative aspects of it, but to do anything other than say he looked rusty And 2 drives does not answer any questions for us. To say anything more than that, like if you want to come on here today and say, oh, he looked awful, and this is who he is, and this is who he's going to be for his entire career, you're being disingenuous if that's your takeaway from that. I thought he looked like you would expect a guy to look that hadn't played in a high competitive setting for the better part of 300-plus days. That said, you have plenty to work on. You had a miscommunication with your tight end in that instance, and you threw a ball behind your tight end, both being Kylan Granson, who maybe he winds up having a large role this year. Those are all things you need to clean up. There's plenty of time to do that. My attention now shifts towards, at least for Anthony Richardson, joint practices and how much visual do we get from both the media coverage standpoint and the overall growth standpoint there, because generally speaking, Jake, these second and third preseason games, they wind up being crapshoots whether or not you're going to see the quarterback at all. Like, I don't think they'll play Richardson game 3, and game 2 has kind of become a quasi dress rehearsal type of deal for some coaches. So I don't know. I think that if this was the best we see of him during the preseason, it leaves me about the same spot as it did before the preseason started, which is he's an unfinished product. There's going to be ups and downs. Thank goodness he stayed healthy. And if you were like me, when he gallops for that 1 yard, I got a little tense because I was curious the first time he ran the ball, what would it be like? I don't want to be doomsday worst case scenario guy here, but how does he run? Does he try to go for the extra yards in a preseason game, or does he just take what's there? He took what's there. He got a yard gain. I was fine with what I saw. There's plenty to work on, but I'm not here. Like, you're not sitting here looking at what happened and saying, well, man, those 2 drives, that's pretty ominous. Like, I think it's going to be a rough year for Anthony Richardson now. Like, no, that's not. I think that's either of our takeaways on that. There's room to grow.
Now, I have a bold Colts prediction.
Ooh, I love a good bold prediction.
A bold one.
All right.
That I'll give you in about 20 minutes.
Yes.
Did you watch the closing ceremony of the Olympic Games?
A little bit here and there. It was on in the background.
Overall takeaway from the Olympics for you?
I regret being annoyed with Steph Curry at times during his career. Like, if you're not a Warriors fan, you get envious and jealous of that. And there were times throughout his run where I was like, man, God, that's just frustrating to have him on your team, to be able to root for him. And then this happened the entire run. But to see that back to back to back to close out that game, that's as good as it gets, man. Like, we talked about it on Friday. This is the end of, they're still going to play in the NBA, but this is the final chapter of glory in all likelihood for that trio of Durant, Steph Curry, and LeBron James. And to be able to see them go out in gold, and to be able to see it done with each of them having different moments, but Steph stealing the show and reminding everybody why he's been the greatest shooter in league history. It was awesome. Like, I was fist pumping. I was going crazy. What about you? Was that?
No, it was cool.
Maybe it meant more to me because of my demographic, but like that, those are the heroes of, my youth of the NBA.
I understand that. I thought, obviously it was tremendous. Here's the thing, and I'm nitpicking here.
Okay.
I know that I'm nitpicking simply to make a point. I'm not taking away from the greatness or the excitement or the pride of the moment in any way, shape, or form. But let's just say, for example, that last 3 that he hits that, like, Mike Greenberg just did 2 hours preceding us about how it's the greatest shot in the history of sport. If that shot doesn't go in, does France win?
The last one?
Yeah.
Would that put him up 6 or put him up 9?
I think that put him up 6, and then they came down and was it Booker hit a shot? I think that's right.
Yeah, Booker hits a layup at the end. No, I don't think they win.
Right.
I do not think France wins. I think
at that point, the U.S. was going to win anyway, right?
Correct.
That cemented it, don't get me wrong.
But then
are
the other 2 threes the iconic moment? Like, don't you still get that payoff?
Yeah, what I'm saying, listen, I'm not taking away in any way, shape, or form. But for that, I think the moment, yes. But that particular shot, to me, that was an icing on the cake shot. I don't know that it was a, like, holy cow, he just saved the United States shot. But
it was the preceding 3s that did that for me.
I get that. For sure. There's no doubt that with him on the floor, you were the best thing you would say about Steph Curry in the Olympics is he is the guy that when you looked on the floor and you said, well, they can't lose because that guy's going to hit shots. Now, LeBron James also was tremendous.
Oh, he's fantastic.
I know that it was not, some of the things he did from a scoring standpoint were unbelievable, but he did so many other things.
Yes.
And it was great. It was great to see them win. The women, too. Don't sell the women short.
Oh, yeah.
To get gold was tremendous. I thought the closing ceremonies, the way that they did it with, representatives from different areas around the world coming up to declare the games complete and extinguishing the flame. And then the Tom Cruise thing was cool at first, but then once it showed him on the flag riding all over L.A. and then the chili peppers and everything, after a while it was kind of like, okay, I get it. It's in Los Angeles now. But somebody asked me this question, and I think it's a great one. And it got huge reaction social media-wise. My buddy Bart asked me this question, and I said, you know what, I'll just throw it out there. And in the fact of now, when you have everything that took place with the Olympics in Paris and the passing of the torch, I know I used that term earlier, but it's really accurate, right? Coming back to Los Angeles, I will admit part of me, 3 times now the Summer Games have been in the United States in the last 40 years. You would think that it would be almost even more spread out than that. But I think there is a symbolism from an international standpoint for the host country of who they select to light the torch to begin the games. It's still 4 years away, but there are so many people connected to Los Angeles that would be outstanding for that purpose and for that role and for that symbolism, that it is a great question of who would be the clubhouse leader. Like, if you could go on, I wouldn't be surprised if you could even do this right now. Probably not, because it's 4 years out. So, I mean, there's no way they're going to take your money and hold on to it for 4 years. But who would be the odds-on leader to be the one that lights the torch to start the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles? My personal top 5 favorites, if I was going to statistically say the favorites, would be, in no particular order, Mary Lou Retton, because she was the face of the 84 Olympic Games in Los Angeles. Carl Lewis, because he was the most decorated and accomplished athlete of the 84 Games in Los Angeles. Magic Johnson, because he played for the Lakers. He's an Olympian. He's been just a staple throughout many aspects of Los Angeles sports. Simone Biles and Michael Phelps would be up there. And then several have pointed out, somebody related to, whether it be his wife or his daughter, Kobe Bryant. And I understand that as well. There are a ton that would be in the mix.
Yeah, it's hard to not think that in some capacity, if not the final torch bearer, that Carl Lewis, as impactful as he was with the 84 games, is not at the top of that list. I would throw Magic Johnson. I agree with a lot of your list. I didn't think you were going to mention Phelps. I thought he would be like an off-the-board name to throw out there, so I'll go a different direction. Perhaps Lisa Leslie. She just got passed by Kevin Durant for the all-time Team USA basketball scoring mark in either division, be it men's basketball or women's basketball.
Good one.
Magic Johnson has to be on there. I would think that, assuming he's not, even if he is playing in it, maybe you have LeBron involved in some capacity. I mean, it would be hard.
I think LeBron is a high favorite as well, yes.
I'm not saying that he's the one that's going to ultimately light the torch, but I think you get another taste of what France had done and what you've seen in previous Olympics, where there's multiple elements of the sports history of the country involved in that torch-bearing process.
I did have somebody say to me, and when I sent out the tweet asking people who would be the clubhouse leader for the 2028 lighting of the torch, and I put in parentheses like, no politics, please. In other words, and by that I meant I didn't want it to turn into, oh, I'll bet it's going to be, and then somebody mentioned one candidate or another candidate, and then it gets into this quagmire, right? So somebody responded and said it can't be LeBron because, he took a knee during the national anthem a year ago or whatever. And I'm like, look, I get it, and I'm not trying to defy my own creed of the non-politic, but let's not forget, in 96, the last time the Olympics were in American soil, they had Muhammad Ali light the torch, who threw his gold medal into an Ohio River after refusing to serve in the military for the war. So, there's kind of precedent there where politics are something that can be, overlooked.
And also, if you're in that anti-LeBron camp, or you think for whatever reason there should be repercussions against him, Team USA has moved on from that if there was ever any animosity. Once you're the flag bearer for the Olympics, like, I hate to tell you this, but they view him as an embodiment of patriotism.
As voted by the Olympic athletes, right?
Like, you've lost that war. Like, if that's the ambassador is chosen, then he is viewed by his compatriots as a representative of America. So,
did Bo Nix yesterday have a really good day because he's a really good quarterback for Denver that's going to be a guy that Sean Payton is going to call upon, or is that another indictment of the fact that the Colts secondary might still be going through some growing pains?
I have a conspiracy theory here. Eddie, can I get the tinfoil hat, please? I think that Sean Payton already has established who his starting quarterback is. And I think his starting quarterback going into week 1 is Bo Nix. And the reason that I think that, Jake, to answer your question, I think that the way that the rotation of the lineups and where the units, first, second, third units were at that stage, that's fair to include that in there. But there's a wonderful breakdown of this on NFL Network and ESPN where they basically highlight there were zone reads and read options and RPOs and play sets that felt exactly catered to what Bo Nix would do for a Broncos offense. And I'm not saying if that's going to be high octane or good or bad, but there were clear reads and sets that felt baked in with the presumptive thought that Bo Nix is going to be their starting quarterback. So I'm not saying I was blown away by what he did, but I do think that there's no quarterback competition there, and Bo Nix is going to be the starter week 1.
I think it's almost indisputable, right? The only thing that would limit Bo Nix from being the starter, one would assume, is the fact that he's a young player and sometimes you want to bring him along slowly. And the Broncos are not – it's not like people thought they were a quarterback away, right?
No.
Now, several players, including Jonathan Taylor, and our question was answered. Thank you to those that tweeted out the photos for me. But we got the answer to the age-old question here that I've – not age-old, but month-old question I've been asking. The Guardian cap, which is essentially the extra eggshell styrofoam that goes on top of the helmet. Now, does it like kind of just stick on there or foam on there? Like it doesn't
clips on like through the face mask.
I saw it. I mean, but there's the back part of it. It looks a little sloppy. It looks like it doesn't hold all the way down, but I applaud it. I will say, if I was a player, I would wear it. Because I don't know is there a drawback to it in any way, shape, or form? But if it even gives you a 1% chance of reducing concussions or serious neurological injury, I'm all for it. I would go for it.
Same. The only way I'd have an issue is and I would think the NFL had tested this, and I'm getting into a realm of area outside my expertise here, Jake, but like if they had done tests that said that like for wide receivers, the aerodynamics of the helmet slow them down a bit. Like, you know how they show those car commercials where they show the wind go over the car and it's like, oh, tunnel, sure. we have fixed all the aerodynamics of this vehicle. It's now so much faster. If there was like proven data that showed that it was slowing down a wide receiver or like a running back, then maybe there's no way they didn't test some of that, right?
Right.
Like you're not just launching that out there and risk harming your product.
Most importantly, what we found out is indeed if you got to put the wrap on it, the paint scheme's going to be there, right?
Yeah,
so
you were big on that. Yeah.
I'm telling you, like I was obsessed with this because my thought, I think it was Joe Ferguson. There was a period there where and I can't remember which way it went, but the Buffalo Bills, when they went to the red helmets, the Jim Kelly era, is most noted, they had just standard white helmets forever. O.J. Simpson, when you look at him playing, he has the white helmet with just the red buffalo on it. I believe it was Joe Ferguson, and I can't remember if it was that they had gone to the red helmets and then they went back for a few seasons to white, or if it was white helmets and then they went to red. But Joe Ferguson was their quarterback and was colorblind. And they came up with a color on the helmet that a colorblind person would be able to differentiate between that and the opponent. And I really did think with the Guardian cap, if they were just going to do the standard blue Guardian cap, it would be advantage have your 3 receivers for certain wear them, and then it's way easier for the quarterback as he's navigating through and trying to figure out what, everything that's going on, because you have such a quick reaction time to go through your reads and to try to see where plays are developing and whatever else. but obviously that's not going to be the case. The Guardian helmets that's what it's called, right? Guardian?
Yeah. Guardian cap. Yeah,
Guardian
whatever.
cap, thank you. They were used, and what'd you say? Probably a handful of guys had them on?
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting because of the lack of coverage, it got maybe 0, but
Right.
I was impressed to see it. The other thing, Jake, if these become socially accepted to the point that, like, by that I mean that fans are into it, not that they shouldn't be out there because they're not socially accepted. Safety is the paramount of the game moving forward. But so does this become a thing where if the Buccaneers have their orange creamsicle jerseys, now there's creamsicle Guardian caps?
Yeah,
like,
they're going to
have to have uniform matching on those, right?
How about this? You ready for a Jake Query prediction?
Yes.
Now, I have a bold prediction coming up that we'll do in about 5 minutes here. But my Jake Query bold prediction. At some point this year, and when it happens,
okay.
I didn't say if, folks. I said when.
And you looked at the camera when you said it.
When it happens, I want people tweeting me the photo. I want people texting me the photo. I want people giving me full credit, just like Mr. Handa Spicoli. I'm giving you full credit, of course. All right. Here we go. If you go to a Colts game, and it's one of the beauties of a Colts game, you go to a Colts game and you're driving on Capitol and you're watching people walking down, they're going into Lucas Oil Stadium, and you're looking around and you're like, that guy's wearing a Matt Booza jersey. Let's go. Look at that dude over there that's got on a Jeff Harrod jersey. And I've always said you can tell how much your franchise sucks based on the number of former players that are represented at the game versus current. Now, that's not the case with the Colts now because you see a lot of Richardson jerseys, Jonathan Taylor jerseys, DeForest Buckner jerseys. But, you go to give me a program or a franchise that's stuck in complete neutral in the mud. The Broncos.
Yeah.
You go to a Broncos game.
Cardinals
game. You go to a Broncos game, we'll begin 50% of the people there are wearing John Elway jerseys.
Sure.
Right?
The other 50 are wearing Peyton Manning jerseys.
Correct. That's exactly right. You go to a Cardinals game.
Larry Fitzgerald
Sure. Is by far the most represented,
Kurt
right?
Warner.
Probably Warner would absolutely be high on the list. And a lot of Pat Tillman. I mean, understandable.
Sure.
But nobody really currently, right? So when you go to a Colts game, you're going to see your occasional John Hand jersey. Don't get me wrong. You might actually see some guy walking in wearing a jersey of Roosevelt Potts. That's cool.
I saw somebody wearing a Austin Collie jersey.
Nice.
Yeah, now that's really going, because then not only are you loyal to that, but that means also that you bought it during the 2.5-year window when he was the first version of Alec Pierce, right? Now, kids, though, you always see there's one guy that's bald and paints a Colts helmet on his head. Mm-hmm. He gets a couple shots every year on television. Then you always get the one guy that's walking into the game and he's wearing shoulder pads and pants and a helmet, and you're like, really? Okay, I didn't know you're playing. And then you want to make fun of him, but then you think, I don't know, though. I mean, people do this for Gen Con or whatever. It's all relative.
Sure. Let them live their life.
Mark my words.
I love it.
This year, by the end of the season, there will be a kid, maybe even an adult, that is going to have on their head at the game some sort of variation of a homemade version of a Guardian cap.
Can I ask?
They're going to look kind of like they're from Little House on the Prairie.
Sure.
But instead, it's going to have the egg. It's going to be like the egg crate foam on their head, and they're going to paint it white with a blue horseshoe, and they're going to be wearing the Guardian cap. Or they're going to buy a Guardian cap at Imro Sporting Goods or something.
But how long before it's officially licensed by the league? How long before you go in the Colts Pro Shop and there's a Guardian cap right there?
Clear purses are already officially licensed by the league. Originally, it was if you're bringing in possessions, it's got to be in a clear purse so that we can see it. Now it's got to be a clear purse with the only thing on the purse being the official NFL logo, right?
Yes.
No question. But eventually, you are going to have kids or people wearing a Guardian cap at Lucas Oil Stadium. Mark my words. It is a matter of when and not if. And when it happens, I want full credit, of course, just like Jeff Spicoli. I have a very bold prediction, an official one regarding the Colts and what I saw yesterday. Something jumped out at me. I watched it. I saw it. And I said, you know what? I don't normally make absolute predictions, but I'm going to do an absolute, and I'm going to do it on the other side. You know, if you look over from yesterday, the Colts and the Broncos at Lucas Oil Stadium, and you really and this is what, what you want out of this radio program, right? You tune into the radio and you're saying, I don't want to hear about, like, who's going to light the Olympic torch, Jake. I don't want to hear about your weekend and how it was San Diego weather. I don't want to hear about the weekend upcoming. I want to hear that. I want to get deep down into it. I mean, I want to do I'm not talking just a quick floss of the teeth. I want the deep, clean, like, let's get
we need a deep dive, Jake. Yeah, we got football to dive into.
The thing, it's exactly right. When you go to the dentist, you want the thing in your mouth that makes that sound like that jackass from Fish. Do we have that sound again, Eddie? Like, you want this sound when you're at the dentist's office to know that they're really getting work done, right? Yeah. Yeah, see, when you hear that from Mr. Thirsty, then you know that suddenly they're getting all of the plaque off, right? You want the deep clean.
I thought that was when they're trying to have you spit out the water. All right, close.
When they take that needle out. No. So you want a deep analysis when it comes to this game. And so I said to myself, I'm going to do a deep analysis. I'm going to look above and beyond the obvious. Like, for example, you've got to love the fact that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 different receivers were targeted yesterday. 17 different receivers were targeted.
I have a pronunciation on the name I think that you're going to.
Pierce?
Yes.
Same stat line as Alec Pierce is our friend. Go ahead, Eddie.
Slukwa.
See, that makes even more sense. Because when Slukwa, you think of like a sleuth, right? Almost like a sloth, there's just a slew of evidence that this guy is just going to secretly and quietly lurk up, and all of a sudden you look and you say, we had our eyes on and we wanted to see what could happen with the different players on the roster. A.D. Mitchell. We really were curious of what we could see out of Kylan Granson. We thought Alec Pierce was going to break out, but then lurking in the shadows quietly like a Sluka. Derek Sluka. He did have a target. He did not make a catch. Same with Alec Pierce, by the way. But the bold prediction that I have right now, okay?
All right.
After watching the game, and yes, I know, a preseason game does not really tell you a whole lot, quite frankly. It just doesn't. But I've seen enough now. I've seen enough now to be able to say confidently, Liatu Latu is going to be the AFC Defensive Rookie of the Year. He is going to be the defensive player that he is going to be a Bob Sanders level impact player for the Colts defense. Now, DeForest Buckner's a wonderful player, don't get me wrong, and they have good players. Zaire Franklin's a really good player. Some of the guys that the Colts have defensively that are good are system good. Are they really good players, or is the system designed to take advantage of what they bring to the table? 6 and 1 half dozen the other. If a unit's playing well, a unit's playing well. Who cares whether it's because you have players that regardless of what system is thrown their way, they're going to play well, or players that just simply match what you are doing. Like, I was talking to my buddy Mike Wood of Bailey and Wood, who is a diehard Dolphins fan, and diehard. He just got back from camp, and we were talking about Tua, and he said, Tua probably is the quintessential system quarterback. The system that they run is perfect for him, and he can probably do it as well, if not better than anybody else, and it really suits his skill set. Okay, well, if that's the case, then it doesn't matter how valuable his skill set translates if he were to go and play for Denver or Seattle or Minnesota, because he's in Miami, and that's what it's set up for. I think the Colts have some defensive players that benefit from a system that funnels towards what they can do. Zaire Franklin would be, and I think he's a great player, but Zaire Franklin probably benefits as much from the system as anybody. But Liatu Latu is going to be a player this year, and there are games where he statistically may not have a huge – you might look at the stats and say, Well, I don't know. I mean, he didn't do anything exceptionally well when I look at the box score, but he alters things just based on his presence because offensive lines have to at all times be aware of him, and then that's freeing up other areas or creating havoc elsewhere. I'm telling you right now, though, you can mark my words. I mean, barring injury, obviously. That's the one thing that I'm going to give myself an out clause for. But on this, the 12th day of August of 2024, I, Jake Query, am prepared to say that, in fact, Laiatu Latu will be the AFC Defensive Rookie of the Year. Write it down.
Do they, and this is me showing ignorance, I forget this every award cycle, do they split Rookie of the Year by conference still? Or is it just
That's a good question.
NFL defensive, NFL offensive?
That's a good question. So maybe I mean NFL instead of AFC.
Because if you do mean just NFL, which I wouldn't necessarily fight you on that. He's basically a co-favorite with Dallas Turner of Minnesota, who had a sack over the weekend. Latu, I think, Jake, a lot of people undoubtedly were very high on when he was selected. But once you start to see some of the goods to that end, and you realize that there's going to be, in part because of the absence of Sam Ebukam, but also in part because of how talented and athletic Latu is, there's going to be opportunities there for him.
Yes. And Tyquan Lewis played well.
Yep.
I mean, that's a nice that they have. For as much as we make fun of Chris Ballard, and I make fun of him, I mean, I always say he's kind of a batty eye snake oil salesman to an extent, but he's pretty transparent. I'll give him that. But 54-60-1. I don't think that necessarily means that we need to pretend that he is automatically, the Red Auerbach of football, but he has forever tried to build a pass rush and invested in areas of that, Kwity Paye being one of them. But I think now they have a 1-2-3 combo that could be really interesting of guys that they can move around between DeForest Buckner, Tyquan Lewis, and I think a lot of that is facilitated by Laiatu Latu. I think he's going to be huge. I think you're going to see another of my predictions, by the way. You're going to start seeing Latu jerseys.
You've been hanging around Jimmy too much.
Oh, no. Believe you me. That's not accurate. We're going to start seeing a lot of Latu jerseys.
Let him make that firm. He has not been hanging out with one Jimmy Cook.
We're going to start seeing Latu jerseys before long. And here, another thing.
Defender jerseys are underrated, by the way. I love having a good corner or a good pass rusher jersey. If you're still a jersey wearer, it's nice to be able to.
You saw a lot of Freeney jerseys here, right?
Yeah. I mean, in this era, though, this new era of Colts football.
I don't know that there are independent, non-Starbucks coffee houses. I mean, I know Hubbard and Craven's is big. There are a couple of them. I think there's one, Monon Coffee Company, I think in Broderpool is an independent joint. There's one on College in Fall Creek. It's a wasted opportunity if somebody doesn't get on this immediately and sign this guy.
You said this during the draft.
The Latu Latte,
yes,
right?
Yes.
You got to do the Latu Latte.
It has to be done. Has to be done.
And then in addition to that, the Latu Latte, because a latte typically is used with espresso bean, right? But if you need to buy that, if you want to be able to take it home, and you can't take, obviously, a latte home when it's made in a bag, but if you want to buy the bean coffee, then you get a sack of it, right?
There you go.
So you get a latte sack, a latte Latu sack. The marketing genius behind all of this, I'm telling you, this guy, though, is going to be a fan favorite player and a difference maker player for them for a long time, assuming he stays healthy. And I've seen enough now.
And it's been a position that we do joke and
I haven't
Chris
seen
Ballard,
anything, and I've seen enough, right?
Right. But we have seen enough of swing and misses at that position from Chris Ballard, right? And this felt like, okay, we'll get ready to be hurt again one more time if you want to try to find that coveted guy off the edge that's going to take your defense to the next level. And at least in terms of early returns from what he's shown, you hope he's that guy of the future. But not only that, he's going to have every opportunity now with the injury to Ebukam to be the defensive rookie of the year. Like that's a very, very real possibility for him.
Now, Anthony Richardson is the other guy the main guy that there's going to be focus on how he looked, how the preseason is going to go, what we expect to see in terms of him continuing to see another defense. After the game yesterday, he talked not only about his comfort level of getting back out there and what it means, almost symbolically what it means to be able to go out. But also, those that most would know offered their critique on how Anthony Richardson looked. And we'll let you hear those comments next, and then Mike Chappell joins us in 15. A lot of yesterday, a couple of players that kind of jumped out. Anthony Richardson, who we're going to talk about, but there were other players that I thought showed themselves well, and that you realize, hey, there might be something here that they can use, and they might have depth more so than what we expected. Again, it's very difficult to tell in a preseason game. There's a long list of guys that were Hall of Famers in the preseason that you never heard from ever again. But there are those players that, for example, in the return game, and how is the return game going to work this year? I don't know, because things are different. But I thought Anthony Gould out of Oregon State had a nice day. And then you had A.D. Mitchell lining up in the slot, which, of course, with Josh Downs out, that's another variable, and we expected to see A.D. Mitchell in that position. But then Gould working through, and I think he thought going into it that he was going to be a guy that was going to get involved in terms of the return game. But there just were a lot of players around, including all of those tight ends that Anthony Richardson was able to get familiar with. Question for Anthony Richardson after the game. And Richardson himself, 2 drives. He was 2 of 4 for 25 yards. The 2 that he missed, one of them I thought he missed pretty bad. He was hurried a little bit. But nonetheless, we know about Michael Pittman Jr. We know about Josh Downs. We know about Alec Pierce, for that matter. But the other players that Anthony Richardson, and keep in mind, when you get an efficient offense and an efficient quarterback, a lot of times you look at a box score after the game and you go, man, they threw to like 9 different receivers over the course of a game. So Anthony Richardson, question is, especially with Josh Downs out, those other receivers out there that you're just getting acclimated with, how important is it to simply utilize this time to get extra reps and timing?
It's just as important as if Josh was still here, not like he died or anything, but regardless of what the situation is, you always got to have that next man up mentality, because you never know like when your opportunity is going to show up, when your opportunity is there. So you just got to take advantage of it. Hopefully, I know they're going to be ready, so it's not too much pressure.
So, not too much pressure. Yes, but I'm telling you, all of those things, it's what we have known in this town, what we've seen in this town in terms of the expectation of how a quarterback goes about his business. The extra timing, the stuff that takes place, the legendary stories of guys meeting off-site or over the summer in places that nobody expected them to be, in the middle of November after a game in some locker room, and you hear a quarterback say like, well, this all goes back to in June when we got together for a week and a half at Huntington Beach, and people are like, wait, you did what? That's when that stuff starts to pay off. And it's not about the pressure of getting to know those guys, but it certainly is just about the understanding, the timing of getting to know those guys. And maybe sometimes with a Josh Downs out, you start to see the advantage later on of the blessing of having to reacclimate or acclimate to other players on the roster, because Downs certainly can be, once he's healthy, kind of a safety net kind of guy. But Shane Steichen is a quarterback whisperer, that we know. He's an offensive guru, that we know. He's also locked in all the time on film and football. So what better person to ask than his thoughts, Shane Steichen? Your thoughts on the performance of Anthony Richardson?
I thought it was good. First time in over 300 days getting out there and playing with his guys. He got 7 reps. He's 2 of 4 there. Obviously wanted to start a little better on that first drive, but then we got backed up, hit a nice pivot over the ball to Mo, and hit a third down, which we're short on. But it was good just to get those guys out, in a game-like situation.
And I think that's the reminder there, Jimmy, that's important that we need to keep in mind. That it's not necessarily about if those numbers and those passes, that short pass on third down, for example, if that's the case in October, you got a problem. Right now, you get a pass. But with each week, the expectation becomes a little more.
Yeah, and that's why I'm just sitting here calling for, I get it, maybe I'm the angsty member of my generation that just wants the games to matter right now, because you wouldn't just be limited to just 2 drives by the time week 1 arrives, which is where you can see that growth and get those measurables.
Yeah, you're of the You're trying to stave off the.
I don't want to be the
now.
instant gratification.
That's right.
But I am starting
So
to
where we
fade
live in,
that
man.
way. I'm starting to fade that way when it comes to football because, look, the league has told you the preseason doesn't matter. They took a game away 3 years ago or whenever it was. Like
And you watch. It's only going to keep going that way, right?
We're going to reach a point at some point in the next 5 to 10 years, whenever the next CBA agreement happens, where you're looking at one preseason game and probably 2 joint practices. That's probably where the shift will happen.
Remember the Continental Basketball Association, the
yeah,
CBA?
Yeah.
So when their players had meetings with the owners, was it the CBA for the CBA?
I think so.
Was it CBA
squared?
Yeah, that's
exactly.
cool.
Yeah.
Mike Chappell, by the way, is the dean of writers when it comes to the Colts, and he joins us next. Mike Chappell is, of course, the dean of writers when it comes to covering the Indianapolis Colts, CBS 4, WXIN, Fox 59, where you can read and see his coverage of the Horseshoe. He joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Chap, I'll begin with this. We have seen over the years, and you and I have talked about this, players that look like they are headed for Canton in the preseason, and then we never hear from them again. I call this the Drew Haddad wing of Hall of Famers.
Or Caesar Rayford, but yes, I get your point.
That's another one, yeah. What position most lends itself, I guess, for overreaction preseason stuff? In other words, is there anybody that we need to proceed with caution in terms of what we've seen so far?
Not so far, but positions, I mean, number 3 quarterback, Warren Sharp, who does really good stat stuff, put out there that since like 2020, whatever it is, X number of quarterbacks have thrown, 75 passes in the preseason. And Sam Ehlinger is at the top of the list in so many things. And good for Sam, because when he's in there, they call him Mr. August, which it's not really a compliment, I don't think. But I think that second and third quarterback is always has a really good chance of shining and throwing up numbers, because you sort of get off script and you're just playing. Chad Kelly for crying out loud. And it lends itself to broken plays and getting out of the pocket and all this. So that and the running back, not really. I mean, they don't focus that much on that every year. They always, I remember back in the day, they said, we're going to focus on running the ball in preseason, and they average 2.6 yards. So, no, I think it's a case more where guys will maybe reaffirm that yes, we've got a problem at this position. But like I know people have questioned how did Anthony Richardson look. He played 7 plays, for crying out loud, 2 series. And Jonathan Taylor, 2 carries for 4 yards. I think it's going to be really, really hard to get a look at what this offense can do with what they hope it will do with these 2 players, because the preseason isn't conducive to what they do. I mean, Jonathan, all great running backs, they need those 15, 18 carries, because I remember Barry Sanders, 10 carries for 18 yards. They were doing a great job. And then he just guts you with 5 carries. And that's what Taylor is. He's going to get the big plays. And Richardson, you think we're going to see some run pass options from him in preseason? I mean, I don't. Why would you? You're not going to show much. And if there's 50 pages in the playbook, they're using like 5 with Richardson. So I don't know. But it is a time to where, like you mentioned, and the Drew Haddads and Caesar Rayford, who might have led the preseason in sacks that one year, and they actually got like a 5th or 6th round pick for him, which was incredible. But no, you just don't want to see guys go out there who you have plans for. Anthony Gould, kick returner, looked good. He made play some in the slot. A.D. Mitchell. You just want them the time they're out there make plays. Mo Ali Cox. I mean, people have had him cut since March because he's older and you've seen his ceiling, and you can save $5 or $6 million, and then he makes the big play with Richardson. So, yeah, just don't when you're a young player and you get the chance, don't tinkle down your leg, which was kind of cool to see Micah Abraham with that strip and fumble recovery touchdown. Boy, that's what those young guys need to do, is when you get the chance, do something and don't get, you're not on a highlight because you just got run past. So I don't get too bent out of shape with preseason, especially with Richardson. I don't know what people expect in the situation they're in, because they're not going to even remotely open up the playbook with Anthony Richardson.
The Dean, Mike Chappell of Fox 59 and CBS 4 is our guest. He joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Chap, I've tried to dodge as much as I can the mentality, the thought process, or the stereotype of either my generation or the generation behind me, which is that we need instant gratification. We need everything right now. We need it immediate. We can't wait week to week. We need all the answers immediately. But I find myself now with the NFL preseason, especially with the league basically telling you at the last CBA that they don't really care about it. They took away a game, and they've subbed it now with joint practices. I find myself now all the more cynical about the preseason to the point that, like, I really don't care. Like, outside of the position battles that are happening, and they're still there for, like, fringe guys or the difference between second and third or third unit not making the roster. Like, I admire that aspect of it, but to your point, you can't make a firm answer on 7 plays or of, a 2 drives or a missed throw here or there. Who's winning in that? Like, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things for the league because all they care about is the regular season revenue and fan interest there. Who is the coaches clearly don't fully value it for their starters because they know it's just another risk to get injured. They know who their starters are going to be unless there's a clear position battle. So who is it for? Is it just for the fringe guys and we're just all, happy viewers because we get to see position battles for the 50th or 53rd spot on the roster? Or is it for nobody and we eventually will reach a point where joint practices are the norm and preseasons are the dinosaurs?
Well, we know where there's going to be 18 games, which means 2 preseason games. And we've seen over the last, 5 or 6 years where these joint practices have really sprung up. And I think coaches really value joint practices more than they do preseason games. Someone asked Shane Steichen that about the joint work after the game yesterday, and he says what the value is. You can sort of script what you want to see with the other coach. Hey, we want to work on low red zone at the 10-yard line going in. We need to work on some third down. We need to do this, and that's what you script practice to be. Yes, it's 11 on 11, and it's starters and stars, but you can more orchestrate. Richardson can be out there for 3 series and not get a real. He may not get red zone. He may get 1 or 2 third downs, and they may be 3rd and 15 where you can't do a lot. So joint practice, you can get a lot more done. Now, I'm curious to see if there's going to be any fights because there seems like there's always fights in these joints. But the NFL came down on somebody, I can't think who the 2 teams were, Detroit and somebody, where they drilled them, $200,000 each. So, and that's what you worry about. But, yeah, but again, I think the one thing with the Colts preseason, there are going to be players who whether it's another corner or a safety or a linebacker who's going to, if you make the team, is probably going to be for special teams. And those are always tight calls. But unfortunately, these guys also, remember we talked to Ed Dodge last week about the safety position. Well, we need to see games. Well, I'm sorry, I will disagree. You should know, you shouldn't still be fighting over or debating what your safety rotation is in mid-August. You should know. So will they? Look at video from last night or yesterday and say, man, yeah, we got a problem at safety. We got a problem, okay? And go out and get somebody, Justin Simmons, or not. So this is one of those kind of rare situations where there's still a question at free safety, which, again, in this time of the year, that's not a good thing. But, you look at the tight ends. There's like 7 tight ends. How many do you keep? 4? I don't see 5 because I don't know that 5th tight end or even the 4th tight end is going to be a better player than another tackle or another, what other position, receiver. I don't know. So there's decisions to make. I default on the fact that I wish they had an answer at free safety. We talk to Gus Bradley tomorrow, and I don't know that he'll give us much of an update on that, but there's value to it. But the league has shown. I mean, the league has shown that too much is too much, and I think coaches would push back on that. But like you mentioned, these joint practices, that's where we're going. If they can sort of harness the extracurricular stuff. But what, 2 or 3 years before we have 18 games and 2 preseason games? I mean, the league's made that very clear, and the Players Association doesn't seem to be that much against it. Now they're going to want something in return, but yeah, what we're used to. I remember going. God, it was back in the Manning day. No, before that, the team reported like early July, like July 5th, and when they had the Hall of Fame games, so you had 5 preseason games. That's gone. But less and less is where we're going, and joint practices will be the new vogue taking over preseason.
Chap, in lieu of talking to you, Mike Chappell is our guest. He's on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Instead of giving our observations of the game and asking you to react to them, I'm just going to give you the floor to say, give us your observations yesterday. Give me what jumped out, good or bad, when you walked away from it, things you were looking for that you didn't see, whatever it might be, whatever your overall reaction was.
No serious injuries. You know, I mean, Trey Sermon had the hamstring. I tell you, which is going to open up things for Evan Hall to kind of step up and maybe have a chance. They like Evan Hall. He missed most of last year with a knee injury. And again, I guess I wanted to see Richardson come out and throw the ball and be out there. And I don't know that I need to see much of Jonathan Taylor. I go back to Edgerrin James. He always had that preseason hamstring about game time, which was always funny. But I really didn't come away with many observations because what they're looking for is again the bottom third of the roster. You want to see whose possibilities, but starting wise, things are pretty much taken care of. Receiver wise, we're not going to see a ton of stuff as far as from Michael Pittman or it'll be good to see Alec Pierce and A.D. Mitchell sort of align themselves. But if you don't play Richardson a lot, what are you going to do? So I don't come away with much other than not getting guys hurt, which Rick Ventori and I we disagree. You know, I would rather err on the side of not getting guys hurt. And he's the old coach. You know, where you get ready for the season is to play. And we've got the 2 games or the 2 practices with the Cardinals coming up. And last year in this scenario, the starters did not play much at all in that second preseason game. And then they played like a half in the last preseason game, which is sort of a different way of approaching things. So not a lot of observations. I need to warm up to the new kickoff thing. It's so strange to see the guy kick off and the 2 lines stand there and they don't move until the ball is touched by the return guy. So I don't know. Again, I'm so much on getting to the season healthy. So as long as nobody significant gets hurt, and I don't mean to downplay Trey Sermon because in his mind and a lot of people's mind, it's important. I understand that. But whenever somebody goes down, I'm always checking numbers of guys standing up just because you want to avoid those big injuries in preseason. And, one game down they have.
Do you think it's clear that if Josh Downs is forced to miss regular season time, that A.D. Mitchell will be the guy in the slot, or is that too much of an assumption based on the little we saw yesterday?
Well, they told us that it could be by committee, and a couple of guys talked to Mitchell after the game, and, it's different. I mean, outside you're going against one guy, maybe get some safety help, but inside, you beat a guy off the line and you got a linebacker waiting to smack you. So it is different, but, is Gould a possibility? I think more likely it's going to be Mitchell. It might be Kylan Granson. He's sort of that tweener type guy, receiver tight end. But I sort of do expect Downs to miss the opener. I just do. You don't want to come back too quick and then you're not right for could be for the rest of the season. You're always battling that high ankle sprain. So I think the team approaches things as Downs won't be ready for the opener, and then if he is, good. So we'll see. Yeah, I think Mitchell's a good possibility, because a lot of times, then you got Pittman outside, Pierce outside, and Mitchell in the middle. And if you're not careful, one of those guys is going to get loose, the 2 deep guys. So Mitchell's a possibility, probably the best possibility moving forward of getting the most reps in a game situation in the slot.
Chap, Tyquan Lewis most benefits from the addition of Liatu Latu Liatu Latu most benefits from the increased play of Taekwon Lewis, or the two of them are not related to one another?
So they're related. I think unfortunately, they both benefit from Samson Ebukam's Achilles. They just do. And I thought what we saw yesterday in the defensive line is what we're going to see. Of course, you want Buckner in there, and if he doesn't play in preseason, I'm not going to be the least bit worried about that. But you had Lewis starting, and then passing downs, he's in there, but then they bring Latu in, and he got some good rushes. He really did. It's kind of funny. We talked to him. His first snap, they like double or triple teamed him. The tight end chipped him, and then there's two guys waiting, and somebody said, "Were you surprised?" He said, "Hell yes." This is a rookie, and they double team him. And I think that's what we're going to see. So which one benefits from the other, I don't know. I just think they both benefit from Samson being out. And I really expect Taekwon to be, if you're trying to get your high school letter, he'll be the one starting. But I think the way they're going to use Latu, he probably will – they'll put him in a position to make plays. And, Lewis probably gets more snaps most of the time, but then Latu will get more quality snaps, I think, because it's a really, really deep line.
Is there any clear indication, Chap, of – you mentioned Molly Cox, and I was taken aback and impressed when he has that catch and run because he kind of does a little spin off the defender. It's like, wow, that was kind of a tight end one type of move. But then you see
Right.
you see in that first and second drive, Richardson targeting Granson a couple times, and I started to think, well, maybe this really is what Shane Steichen said it's going to be, which is a lot of guys that do things well. Nobody that I'm paraphrasing on this part. He didn't directly say
Right.
the end of this, but no one that's an elite level tight end. But it's going to be a by committee kind of approach. Is that still where we stand in those waters? Or I was impressed by the Cox play. It was only one move, but I was like, man, that was nice. It was a nice catch and run.
But that's Mo.
Yeah.
You go back and look at the last several years, and it's not a knock. We always just talk about Jack Doyle, where he'd get you when it's 3rd and 7, he'd get you 8, and that's not a bad thing. It's just they all have limitations. And I talked to Mo, I think it was last week, and he said, yeah, he said I'm a blocker. He's primarily, he said I'm not a tackle, but I do a lot of blocking. And go back and look at JT's record year in 21, and it was Mo doing a lot of blocking, Jack doing a lot of blocking. You really want to see Will Mallory. He's missed quite a bit of camp with, I think it was a hamstring. And then what are they going to do with Jelani Woods and Drew Ogletree? It's an interesting group, an athletic group, but I don't think anyone's really separated themselves from the group. And it's going to be really interesting how they decide to keep tight ends, because they're really going to be important with the offense. But I just don't know that I could argue that they've got 5 tight ends that merit a roster spot. I just don't. But that means you're robbing another position. You'd love to have the Brock Bowers type of guy who he does this and we know he's the lead guy. But I just think we're going to see something from this and something from this guy and something from this guy, which is great. But that makes it hard when you're trying to juggle your roster. They like all these guys, but they're sort of all, like I said, they all do something, but they all have deficiencies, and that makes it tough when it comes to juggling your roster.
Hey, Mike, do we feel better about, again, I often say this, one preseason game does not, true indication make, but it seemed like some of the maligned figures that we have talked about in the defensive backfield each kind of took turns showing some competency or making a little bit of noise yesterday. Do we feel better about that room, or are we still thinking that it's probably an area where they will hard look at the free agent wires once cuts are made?
I just wish they'd take a hard look now. I don't feel much better about it. I guess the safeties played okay. I didn't break down film from a preseason game, but Juju Brents doesn't play, and then Dallas Flowers is out there and he gets 2 interference penalties, which are like long completions. I wish I wasn't concerned about Juju Brents, and I shouldn't be, because we were told and it was emphasized that this is a minor shoulder injury, and if this the opener against Houston, he would play, and that's great. But this is still a young player who has had injury issues, and whenever that player again comes up and there's something else, it's just a small red flag. But I think they're one injury at corner away from being in trouble. I just do, and again, with what it takes to bring in a veteran presence at this point, it's 1 year and it's $1 million, $2 million, and is it guaranteed or I don't know how you do that, but to leave yourself vulnerable at the secondary, really at both spots. Julian Blackmon is a player. Kenny Moore's a player. But if somebody goes down, you're you're already thin at those spots. I think as far as proven players, then it's really dicey. And I just think that being the case, and the remedy being not a heavy investment, I don't get it. I don't agree with it. But that's that they run the team. They can do what they feel best is. But so no, I don't feel a lot better about the secondary. I know Bo Nix had a really good game and whatever, he off the bench. So, I don't feel a lot better about it, and I probably won't until they sign a free agent. I'm kind of blinders on that, but I don't feel a lot better, any better
this
about
week
the secondary than I did.
Sorry, Mike. This week, joint practices with the Arizona Cardinals, and then preseason game number 2, and of course, Mike Chappell will be covering all of that, CBS4 WXIN, where you can both read and see his work. And then, of course, you hear him here on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Gas Line. Chap, we appreciate it. As always, talk to you next week, all right?
Be well, guys.
Mike Chappell joining us on the program. Yeah, the defensive backfield is one that they better hope. I mean, that's the easiest way to say it, Jimmy, is they better hope that it doesn't burn them, because that's been – and we do this. Not just we, the media. I mean, fans in general, the people at the barbershop or the sports bars or wherever you might be, we pick an area that becomes like an obsession where people they have to do this. You get to a point where once it gets on the radar in fans' minds that something is a possibility, then I remember, and because at the time I was following pretty closely what the New York Knicks were doing, I remember when they acquired Carmelo Anthony. The rumor got out that Carmelo Anthony, once his contract was up in Denver, was going to sign as a free agent in New York. And so suddenly the New York fan base, the New York media, the New York everything, the NBA media, it was the Knicks have to get Carmelo Anthony. They have to get him now. Now. And it became this frenzy. It was like a feeding frenzy. They have to get him. And the owner fell for its hook, line, and sinker to the point where mortgaged the future of the franchise to go out and get Carmelo Anthony, because that was the foregone conclusion. And I think that general managers sometimes stave the temptation of getting caught into or vacuumed into, like the fish guy, the vacuum sound of the noise of everybody forcing you to do something that you don't want to do, like you're trying to avoid getting sucked and pulled into, like that, the direction that you don't want to go. And so is there a little bit of maybe not stubbornness from Chris Ballard, but the noise has gotten so much about why are they not going out and getting a safety that the Colts are then almost compensatory of, no, we're not going to do it now because everybody says we need to, and we'll do it the way and organically the way that we want to.
But this isn't new. The idea of him doubling down every year, there's a position group where it's like, no, we're good, we're fine, and then it winds up being that no, you kind of weren't fine. Maybe you should have made a change earlier.
Corner hurt him a little bit. I mean, they have big athletic corners. I do like Juju Brents, but you got to start getting him out there regularly. Yes,
and then after the game, or after the season, there was, that was my fault. I didn't do enough to help those guys out or help out Anthony or whatever.
That's true. He has done that.
Wide receiver last year.
Yeah. I mean,
you guys remember Mike Strawn?
Yes.
Mike
He's
Strawn
in that
was one of those
training camp Hall of Fame, yeah.
And Mike Strawn was one of those that, we don't need to go out and get receivers. We got Mike Strawn. He's big. He's athletic. He can make plays. You always fall into that, right?
Deron Carter.
Well, Deron Carter was Deron Carter is the prime example of the vacuum of Oh my gosh, did you hear? Yesterday I was at Baskin Robbins and this guy came up and so his next door neighbor's mailman is brothers with a kid that goes to school with somebody at the Colts, and they're in the front runner for Duron Carter, Chris Carter's kid, and he plays in Canada, and he's the next big thing. I mean, whoever gets him, it's going to be huge. And Duron Carter, it became down to the Colts and somebody else. I can't remember who it was. And it was announced that the Colts are the ones that signed him. And I mean, holy cow. Like, people in Carmel were going out and lining up their chairs for the parade that was going to be in another 3 weeks for the fact that Duron Carter landed with the Colts, and they had a banner. Millsy and the guys are coming out, we're going to have the band together at the stadium, and we'll have a banner for Duron Carter, it's going to be a Colt. And like, people went crazy over it.
Deion
Kane's highlight of Deion Kane's time as an Indianapolis Colt. He was an 8th-round draft pick out of Clemson, and I remember because I watched every play he made at Clemson, and I told people, if the ball is 8 feet away from him and he's got to contour his body 9 feet around and wrap himself around somebody, make a one-handed grab every sinsingle time. If it hits him right between the numbers, it's going on the turf every single time.
So he needed Anthony Richardson.
And yeah, that's right. So Deion Kane's highlight with his time with the Colts was playing in the Amp Harris Reggie Wayne celebrity basketball game with me on his roster. That was when Jacoby Brissett shot 46 times, and that was just in the first 5 minutes. And Deion came when we were sitting on the bench finding out that I was a Clemson fan. That was the highlight of his time in Indianapolis. He's like, oh, my gosh, there's a guy here that you saw me play in college? And I said, well, I did. Would have used you in the national championship game, but you flunked a drug test, so that's cool. He's good playing that. But I mean, he's a nice guy. But, he's another one that looked the part, felt the part, came out of a big-time program, and never heard from him again. Duron Carter is the big one, though, because that was one that they had to go out and, and then you had, how about Chad Kelly?
Yeah.
Chad Kelly. They need to start Chad Kelly. Chad Kelly, they put him on the –
That one, though, I will say, that one I will not back the fan base for. There's other examples where the fan base clamors for something, and I'm like, okay, I see it. I never understood the Chad Kelly fever.
Oh, it was crazy.
Like it put me in a position where I'm defending the front office. It's like, he's not good. Like, what are we doing?
Jacob Eason?
Jacob Eason, again, goes back to my wager with a listener that I've never heard from since that made a bet with me that he would be a better pro than Trevor Lawrence. And I know that, Eddie, you and I have had discussion, as have Jimmy, about where Trevor Lawrence ranks in the NFL, but at the very least, we can say that he will have a better career than Jacob Eason.
That's a
right?
lot. You're fine. Yeah.
Don't say that yet. Eason's career's not over, Jake.
Where is Jacob Eason right now?
That's a good question.
Seattle? Is he back in Seattle?
Somewhere on the West Coast, probably.
Is he still in the league? Do we know? I'm going to say that Jacob Eason is with, I think Seattle actually turned the page on it. I'm going to say Jacob Eason is a Washington Commander. Jimmy, your guess.
I've cheated. I can't play. I know the answer. I'm answering.
AFC or NFC?
I cheated. I can't play.
AFC or
He's
NFC?
asking for him.
I'm asking, is he in the AFC or NFC?
He was in the NFC.
So he's not in the league anymore.
Well, correct. There's no way to tell you that without telling you he's a free agent right now. Correct. He's not in the league. He was last He was last on a practice squad. You want to play that game of where he was? It was an NFC team.
Practice squad.
No,
NFC
he's on a team right now.
Oh, is he on a team?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm going
Probably
off.
Should have gone over this in the meeting.
I'm going off the bio Wikipedia. It says he's a free agent. I apologize. Maybe that's on me.
Okay, so Eddie, he is with a team now. Is it an AFC or NFC team?
NFC.
An NFC team. I'm going with the Washington Commanders. I'm sticking by my pick. Jimmy, your pick?
I can't play. I cheated. I see what Eddie's talking about now. I just misread it.
In fact, okay. Give us the answer, Eddie.
The Green Bay Packers.
Okay.
He was released August 5th. I win. He's a free agent. Checkmate.
How many teams has he been with then? Because you reach a point, right, where it's just about collecting gear.
He has been with 7 teams.
7?
Yeah.
See, that's a ton of free gear. I'd load up. Who has the coolest swag that he played with?
Seattle. Gotta be Seattle, right?
Yeah, I mean, are you kidding me? I'd load up with...
Here's the list. Colts, Seahawks, Panthers, 49ers, Panthers again. So 5 teams. Giants, Packers.
See, the Giants and the Panthers stuff, you can have a garage sale.
San Francisco stuff.
It's okay, right?
I like their colors.
The Panthers stuff, it looks like a USFL team. That logo's terrible.
I didn't have to look that up, Jimmy. That was by my latest recollection, because I remembered them signing him when the whole love thing was happening, but I didn't know if he was still on the team.
I wasn't judging your ability to think of something. I was making sure I still know how to read.
Now,
is
Jacob Eason still, when he's a free agent and they do a Zoom call with him to see if he's interested, does he still come down the hallway putting his shirt on with some hot chick? Remember that happened in the draft?
Yeah, yes.
That was his girlfriend. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, but it was one of the more impressive. It was actually probably the most impressive part of his career to this point.
Where do you land on grotesque uniforms? Like alternate uniforms or throwback uniforms of teams that are just patently bad. I lean towards the side of, like, if you're asking me to pick throwback stuff, I would like to have that bad, ugly jersey as a talking point in the house. For example, the Packers jersey, that like weird old school where it looked almost like a warm-up penny, right? Like a throwbacky,
Okay,
the blue, navy blue with like the yellow circle in the middle.
See, I don't remember that. To me, the most yak, and I call it yak, not yards after catch, but like I'm going to puke. The most yak throwback colors are the New York Jets when they were the New York Titans.
I'm showing Jake. So it's a navy jersey.
Yeah, it's not bad.
With a
that's not bad.
The Jets jerseys
yellow
this year,
circle
oh
in the
my
middle.
gosh.
Bad?
Horrible.
Throwback or regular?
Throwback. Horrible.
Which ones are they? What color?
They're red.
Yeah, that's lame. I mean, it goes for. I do get a kick out of it when, like, they're wearing throwbacks. Like, what do you mean? Well, they played a 1909 exhibition game at a YMCA wearing these shirts. Okay, come on.
Can it be throwback without the leather helmet? I mean, honestly, like, could we be
Yeah,
real here?
exactly.
If we're going that far back.
But let's be real. When it comes to the retros, the true throwback uniforms, you can't even really say the Chargers anymore because they kind of went to that as standard.
Yeah.
The creme de la creme of throwback uniforms is the Detroit Lions. Just the all-silver helmet with the blue jersey and silver pants. Everybody else go home. That's the winner.
I like and I'm not saying that this is the winner, Jake. I'm not fighting you on this.
I'm talking about if you're going of like the 40s and the 50s era.
Okay, so you're going way back. Okay,
Yeah,
I was going to say like the late 80s, 90s Eagles with the
Kelly
wings
Green,
on the side,
cool.
the Kelly Green. I like those.
First team I played on in Little League at the YMCA, I was the Eagles, and all of the dads got together with our white helmets from Emro and spray painted them green and then used silver duct tape to make the wings on the side.
Nice.
Oh, so it was styling.
That's
trust
sick.
me. But still, if you're going with early to mid 80s retro colors at that point, it is end of story, no debate. Everybody else go home. The Seattle Seahawks are the #1 winner, and I will fight anybody that says different. This song always reminds me, by the way, of the greatest, the most innovative idea that somebody implemented that still makes me mad I didn't think of it myself.
It's got to be a long list.
Good point. Forever, I wanted 867-5309 as my phone number. When, at one point when I was getting a new cell, I asked for 867-5309. And here in town, it's a business. I always forget which one it is, but it is somebody got smart. But I read an article recently of a guy in, like, Middle Earth America. Insert a state in Middle Earth America. Jimmy, go.
Iowa.
So there's a guy in, like, Iowa. I can't remember where it was, so we'll just say Iowa for the sake of the story. That had I believe it was a gas station linked to, or a grocery store linked to a gas station.
Mm-hmm.
So, for every, kind of like Kroger does. It was not Kroger for what it's worth, but each time that you use your loyalty card, you rack up points for whatever else. Oftentimes, those are associated with your phone number. So a guy in Iowa, when he set up for his loyalty reward program, put in that his phone number was 867-5309, and nobody had used that yet, so it took it. It was like, okay, Jimmy Cook, your loyalty reward number is 867-5309. So when people would go and scan or whatever, buy whatever, and it would say, like, do you have a phone number? People would just automatically type, like, people that didn't already have a program and just wanted to skip it,
And it would
just type in 867-5309. So this guy had, like, 2.5 million reward points.
That's awesome.
They had to end up giving him not only an entire store, but also a small island next to
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, he owns the company now.
Correct. No, they came out finally and said, like, wait a minute, like, we have to put a max here on the number of benefits that you can get.
Isn't that where you're at right now with a certain gas station?
Yes, I do have enough reward points that I've never, and you know what? At this point, I probably 10% of the time that I go in and buy anything, gas, whatever else, I actually scan my card. It's on my phone. Usually my phone's in the car, whatever.
It's instant bottle service for you when you do that, right?
And I've never used it. Yeah, that's right. I've never used it. I've never cashed a single thing. So I don't even want to know at this point what I'm eligible for.
I take it they don't expire?
Correct.
Nice.
Yeah, if they did, I'd be really in trouble. The funny thing is, though, at this point, I have, I don't know, 500,000 reward points. And then you look at it, it's like, oh my gosh, I have enough to get $100 worth of gas.
I was going to ask, what's the gas station equivalent of 1,000,000 miles? Like, you know how they used to make a big deal about that if you were a frequent flyer of a certain airline, they'd be like, oh, hey, we have Steve Smith on board, and he just completed his 1,000,000th mile.
It's like the people that used all of their cigarette miles or cigarette reward points to, like, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. What? I finally cashed in and got myself a surfboard. And you're like, oh, really? So when are you learning to surf? Well, I have emphysema, so I can't do it. You know what I mean? It's a bit of a drawback to the program there, right?
Didn't think that out in the long game.
I'm looking up right now how many points I have, or what I can get for them in terms of the cash in. But it's going to be significant, I can tell you that. Cashing in yesterday, do you think the Colts cashed in on the opportunity? I know they didn't get the win. Denver did. Bo Nix, I guess, looked pretty good. But you agree with Chap in the fact that you just can't really tell anything, and the only thing, as we talked about or predicted could be the case, is you go away from the whole situation without injury, and so therefore that's the upshot of it all?
Yeah, I don't want to fully undercut the fan experience, right? Like, I get it. People have a fun time getting to go to Lucas Oil Stadium and getting into the routine of being a part of game days. So I'm not trying to take away from that. It looked like a great crowd on hand yesterday from all the shots that I saw on Fox 59 watching the game. But the NFL doesn't care about these anymore. Like, they don't. They've shown that point of emphasis about not caring about the preseason the last time they renegotiated and cut down from the 4 preseason games to the 3 preseason games. And Chap reaffirmed what I've heard around the league. Coaches value joint practices far more than they do preseason games because so much more of what they want out of their roster is controllable. You can go to the other staff and be like, hey, we want to practice a 2-minute drill against, exotic blitz packages, or, oh, hey, we'd like to try a scenario where the ball's all the way at our own 20. We got to work our way down the field, or vice versa. You can ask, hey, we want our secondary to be tested. Can you guys just have a quick hitter drive, or we just want deep shots or post routes or corner routes on this drive? You can navigate and script a practice with a coaching staff on the other side to get situational information about your roster that you just can't get in the preseason. So he stayed healthy, did Anthony Richardson, and you got to see for the photo op him and Jonathan Taylor being in the shotgun together again, and you got to finally see your franchise quarterback back in a Colts uniform. But I'm far more interested in what the reports and the feedback and clips are from the joint practices than I was ever going to be about preseason week number 1. And that's not hindsight. That's how I've always felt with this, because it's what the league is selling us, Jake. Like there's going to be a time, maybe I'm too extreme in this, but I wouldn't be surprised if at all 10 years from now, even past the 18 game point the league clearly wants to shift to, if you get one preseason game in the offseason as a dress rehearsal and the rest are all joint practices, because I just think they're far more valuable for the staff and for overall player evaluation than 2 drives for 7 plays against the Broncos.
I have $400. I can get $400 in gas cards.
Okay.
That's what.
Is that transferable to stock options as well? Or
is that because you can buy 200?
Correct.
Got it.
$200 is the max you can buy. I have enough for 2 of those.
Wow.
Now,
if I would have,
are you underwhelmed by that?
Yeah. Are you kidding? That's like,
I was going to say, like, I felt like
20 years. But again, I kind of owe it to my. I mean, I've done it to myself, because literally, I'll bet 15% of the time I actually remember to have my card scanned.
Yeah.
The guy working there is cashing in, because when they say, "Do you have a card?" You ever notice this? Anybody ever notice this? Do you have a rewards card? Not with me. Dink.
Yep.
And they click one of them. Think about how much.
But they tell you they're doing you a favor. They're like, oh no, I got you. Don't worry about it. No sweat. But it's to his personal account.
Like, wait a minute, that guy's got 1.8 million points.
Would you rather have $400 to that gas station or $300 to an online shopping place?
$400 to the gas station. Because I know that I will always need gasoline.
On the conversation of the preseason versus joint practices, though, are you in that same camp? Like, I would rather them, regardless of the actual regular season game total, in terms of what you see in the preseason, I'd rather them just come out and say what it is, which is joint practices are more valuable. We'll have one preseason game just as a dress rehearsal. But other than that, it's all joint practices.
That's fair. That's fair. Because
the only argument
I'm a
I
little
have
torn
for
on it, and I'll tell you where. Because, for example, it's all relative. In the COVID year, preseason football, people would have been like, oh my gosh, anything, right?
Sure.
I mean, we're watching video game competitions because people just, in an Olympic year, it gets lost in the shuffle, the NFL preseason, because we've been watching legitimate, people have been so enjoying the Olympics. If baseball really makes a comeback also, but I think a big part of the preseason is by the time you get into like August, September, people are just jonesing for sports.
Yep.
But we've had a lot of that lately. So this year, it's lost a little bit.
But I
right?
think I just need the beak wet the one time. Give me that sensation for one preseason game, and then let me read and watch. That's a common phrase. It's not crazy.
Now, is that saying that you want your beak moisturized, or you're saying
I've always thought I want to taste.
Be quet. Is quet a word that I'm not familiar with?
We're going beak. I want my beak wet.
So this is a bird that is going up.
Just
and
a dabble. Just a little taste.
Okay.
That's all I need to get the fix. It's just give me the one preseason game. I'm good. And then let me read about joint practices.
So this essentially what you're talking about here is the bird version of getting your toe in the water, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. That's all I need. Because you're right. You have that craving for football, but I don't need it through 3 meaningless preseason games when potentially only one's going to matter. Because Chap's right. They didn't play the starters in Game 2 last year. And I think you got, Eddie, a brief taste in Game 3?
You got almost a full half.
Okay, so you did get that extension of the dress rehearsal. That's all I need.
So this is
joint practices the rest of the way, and then a dress rehearsal. That's
ornithological version of get your toe in the water, right?
Correct.
Okay.
You've heard that. I'm not I didn't make that up. You've heard that phrase before, right?
Your beak in the water?
Get your beak wet.
Get your beak wet?
Yeah.
Now you're saying that's beak and then
beak.
Wet, not
no,
like
I'm not combining the words.
Wet,
beak,
right?
pause, wet.
Beak wet to me sounds like it would be a resort in Thailand.
It does.
Right? I just had a fabulous weekend getaway where, we were supposed to go out to Fiji and we got diverted and we ended up in Bequet. It was fabulous. But,
Could be Canadian as well. It's right next to Quebec.
All-night party.
Bequet.
Yeah.
Hate driving through the wilderness of Bequet.
Do you think there's a Bequet anywhere in the world? I'm thinking it's Bequuet, right? Bequet.
Wet one's beak to partake in part of the profits of another person's business, usually as a result of extortion. Okay.
So
that
is different than getting your beak wet, right?
I guess.
Now, Bequet, on the other hand, I'm going to guess there has to be a Bequet, Thailand, right? Doesn't it just sound like it?
I feel like
apparently it's a kind of caramel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How about that?
See, so what we need to do is open a Bequet caramel place in Carmel
with chai tea.
Chai tea on the side. We listen. If nothing else, I hope that people realize this. You're stepping out just for the day. You're going out. You're running an errand. You're in your car. You're picking up the kids from school. You're doing something like that, and you had the radio on yesterday because you were listening to JMV, or you had the radio on. Or the day before if it's during the week, or you had your radio on yesterday because you were listening to Matt Taylor and the Colts broadcast while you're driving around, and then you don't realize it, but you get in the car and you fall upon this program, and for a split second you think what you're listening to is some sort of an educational thing on PBS, because that's what we want to do here, is educate and entertain. And if in fact there is a Bequet, Thailand, then absolutely we've hit the jackpot on the serendipitous educational experience. But it doesn't appear as though there is. But we have the marketing aspect of it now, because Bequet caramels, we can open that up right now in Carmel and sell Eddie's chai tea as well. No watermelon gummies, however.
Yeah.
You can't have watermelon caramel. No.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
That's for the Illinois location.
You could do caramelized watermelons.
Yes, aggressive
When we branch
expansion.
out of our store, we'll sell Eddie's watermelon gummies at our Illinois and Ohio state line locations.
All right.
All right, Hamilton. By the way, Scott Agness is going to join us, talk a little Olympic hoops in just about 13 minutes. Very, very underrated band, by the way. And one that when this album came out, there were probably a lot of people that thought that didn't realize this band had been around forever. Athens, Georgia, if I'm not mistaken, the home of the B-52s. It was a tremendous weekend, both from a sports viewing standpoint and just an overall, the weather was literally perfect. Jimmy, you did what over the weekend?
We had the Cook baby shower. So my wife had her baby shower with friends and family from all over. Wrapped that up yesterday. It was a good time to see a lot of, like I mentioned, friends and families. We get ready for welcome our first child here next month.
Now, you're not going to do the gender reveal dealio, right?
No, it's a boy.
Good. That's very...
No, I'm anti... I'm not... Like, people could do it. I didn't need that. It's good. I don't need to go hit a golf ball or pop a balloon or cut a cake.
Eddie, you did what over the weekend to take advantage of the weather?
On Saturday, spent 3 hours with my parents at their storage facility, cleaning that out a little bit.
Oh, yeah, you found some old beer, right?
Yes. Cans. Tons of them.
Empty or full?
Empty.
Oh, okay.
My dad collected cans when he was in high school.
Any Billy beer?
In college. What?
Any Billy beer cans?
I would have to go through, or he may know if he's listening, he can text me.
Olympia?
I just said I don't know. I didn't examine them, Jake. You see, there was 10.
You were just trying to get a job done.
We were just trying to get out of
Iron City? Any Iron City?
And then the rest
Liverpool?
of the day, Saturday, I had Indiana Sports Talk Saturday night, went to the Colts game a little bit yesterday, and then did some work on a project yesterday.
Falls City? Is that one of them?
What'd you do?
That is a good question. Saturday, went to Center Point Brewing in Broderpool.
Oh, went to the drive-in Friday night. Forgot about that.
You went to the drive-in.
Nice.
What'd you see at the drive-in?
Deadpool and Wolverine.
Nice. What'd you think?
Good movie.
Yeah, good stuff.
Now, who'd you go to just the two of you to the drive-in?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Separate cars. For half the movie.
Did you see any monkey business going on?
Didn't examine, Jake. We just watched the movie, and then we went home.
Okay. Center Point Brewing in Broderpool, there were like 3 couples there that had their kids running around, and they were all college friends, which was kind of fun to chat with them. And it was just perfect to sit outside. And then went to my favorite. I love 317 Burger. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's awesome. Right across from the firehouse in Broderpool. That was Saturday, and then yesterday I had like a 5-hour golf lesson, but it was perfect outside to do it.
My dad chimed in. Yes, and yes.
Yes.
Even
see?
have pirate player cans.
No wait. How many cans of Billy beer does he have?
I don't know if he knows the exact number.
Are you wanting to keep one for your collection?
Billy Beer was Jimmy Carter's brother. Billy Carter had a beer line that lasted 6 weeks. I have a Billy Beer T-shirt, but I think at my parents' house there might be a Billy Beer beer can. But that's the old pull tab beer can collectibles back in the day was fun for sure.
Sure.
No doubt about it. Scott Agness going to join us next. Billy beer cans is his little testimonial. Billy Carter, who was the precursor to Roger Clinton, quote, "I had this beer brewed up just for me. I think it's the best I have ever tasted, and I've tasted a lot. I think you'll like it too." Billy Carter. That's on the can itself.
They weren't charging by the letter back then?
The art of the can is beautiful. Nice blue, orange. I mean, it's a good-looking beer
It is very
can.
nice.
But I want to say that Billy Beer went out of business. It's kind of the DeLorean of the beer world, although I don't think it's as cool as DeLorean. Let's see how long Billy Beer was actually produced. And I'll bet you, I'd love to know maybe they found out who the West End Brewing and Pearl Brewing produced it. Let's see. It was introduced in 1977, was Billy Beer. And it ceased production in 1978. So, it says, despite Carter's promotion of Billy Beer, privately it was revealed that he drank Pabst. Let's go, man. Let's go. Billy Carter and the PBR party, man.
What could have been? What a crossover that could have been.
Listen, that was only, obviously, 1977 to today. So you're looking at, 47 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So in another 47 years, we might be able to put together our PBR party. We'll get it going, right? Scott Agness joins us now, and I'm sure thrilled to be doing so on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Scott, you saw Tyrese Halliburton's post, which was pretty funny. He held up his gold medal and essentially said this is like working on a group project for school, not doing anything, and still getting an A. What did Tyrese Halliburton, in your opinion, what would be the key things that he might have learned or taken away from this experience?
I think I go all the way back to almost a year ago, Jake, before the season, following his World Cup experience, and he was saying, man, I'm tired of losing. I'm tired of being a loser. And I think what he probably learned throughout not just this Pacers season, but in particular with Team USA, is what it takes to win, is how you prepare your body, how you prepare your mind, what a big time meeting entails with these type of athletes going into the biggest game of some of their lives. Not someone like LeBron or not like Steph, but I think the mental aspect and all that he would be able to gather throughout the process was probably the biggest thing. And then I would also say the work level. There was no surprise to me, Jake, that it was Steph Curry who came through in the final two games. And here's why I say that. When I was out in Vegas at those exhibition games and workouts, the last guy on the court both days I was there was Steph Curry. He was shooting and shooting and shooting some more. So I think all of that and more is what Tyrese got out of this experience.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing in watching the Olympics that, all of us could probably learn from, but it had to be good for him, was just that fact, to piggyback what you said there, Scott, the intensity under which LeBron James, Steph Curry, I'll put those two notably, Durant, and quite frankly, Devin Booker, who I thought was the one guy that brought a skill set that was the least unique to the rest of the roster, but he also played, hit big shots and did everything that was asked of him. But I just think that especially for LeBron James and Steph Curry, these are two guys with essentially nothing left from a resume standpoint to prove, but the way that their intensity was able to ramp up with each level of the request placed upon them, to me, is I hope something Tyrese Halliburton takes away.
For sure, 100%. I think you saw along the way too the fact that it was the additional pieces that kind of got them through to those final games. But when it mattered most, who did we want on the court, right? Steph, LeBron, and KD. And those guys were the ones that put them over the edge and were able to will them through that adversity early in the game when they were not playing well, when they were turning it over, when they weren't playing the level of basketball that we had all expected. And so I do want to stress that you do see a lot of differences when it comes to the NBA game and FIBA game, but perhaps the other thing that Tyrese was able to glimmer out of was a little bit more, again, of how important defense was. One of the big reasons he was not out there was because they had better options on both ends, not just offense, but defense with Derek White and Drew Holiday.
Scott Agness is our guest. He covers the Pacers for Fieldhouse Files, and he joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Scott, the thing that got most of my group chats buzzing from the Olympics had nothing to do with what happened on the court. It was in the hours and day or so after Team USA wins gold, and Brian Windhorst has his write-up on ESPN.com that mentions, as he's going through the next generation of stars for Team USA, he mentions Tyrese Halliburton. He says, quote, Tyrese Halliburton was slowed in the Olympics by a minor leg injury. Team USA didn't announce it, but he had an MRI, sources said, and he acknowledges the fact he was also caught in a numbers game there, which didn't help with his spot in the rotation itself. What do we know about the minor leg injury that Tyrese Halliburton was pinned with per Brian Windhorst, and is it at all a complication from what he dealt with at the end of last season?
Yeah, the full picture isn't quite there yet, but yeah, I believe it is a groin-related type injury, which is probably connected to the hamstring with all that. But yes, as he alluded to, and it's just pretty obvious, he wasn't going to play anyway, unless truly needed. So that did not directly impact him. You could see him moving around, celebrating. It's not like it was extensive from that situation. But yeah, it's from a Pacers standpoint. This is what the next couple of months is about. It's for him to get healthy through all this. And that was the one concern going into all this, was would he be healthy for it? He was healthy enough to get there.
The mindset shouldn't be, though, and this is what I said to some friends and family who are diehard Pacers fans. They were worried, like, oh, should he have been out there, or should he have been at all involved in Team USA? It doesn't sound like, at least from early returns, that him being out there is something that you're going to regret by the time October rolls around. Like, I still think all the way around, even if the report is a minor leg injury, this isn't something where by the time we get to the opener, you're still thinking, oh man, he shouldn't have been out there. He shouldn't have got this experience. He shouldn't have gone and won a gold medal. This is not a panic moment, right? At least as it stands.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think there's always caution or thought that, come December, if you're still dealing with this or something with that hamstring again, then in hindsight, you'll look back and say, hey, look, who's paying your salary? We would have liked for him to just stay home and get healthy. But I think in the big picture, look, you are committed to Tyrese for the next 5 years with this contract, the largest in franchise history. I think him being there and doing everything and experiencing everything that we talked about in the first question here with this whole Olympic experience was just incredibly invaluable, priceless, truly, from all of that. Yes, you need for him to get healthy. He was, by his account, 100% healthy, both going into Las Vegas for training and while out in Las Vegas. He said that several times. And so this is something that popped up, and it's quite frankly why hamstrings are so tricky, because they can lead to so many other issues, especially on that side of the body.
Scott, this is going to sound like a negative about Tyrese Halliburton. It is not intended that way at all, okay? There is, the age-old joke. I told it last week. What do you call somebody who comes dead last in their medical school class academically? You call them a doctor, right? I mean, you are the 12th guy on an Olympic gold medal winning team. You are a gold medalist. But do you think there's any aspect of this experience for Tyrese Halliburton that humbled him?
Perhaps a little bit, but really I don't think so, Jake, because he knew exactly what he was getting into. Same thing with Devin Booker. We all saw that memorable tweet of like a fan saying, we need a guy to just get down and do the dirty work and accept his role, and he said, I will. And I think Tyrese, that's in large part why he was selected, because they knew he was going to be a no-fuss player. They knew he could the jolt he could provide offensively if needed, and on top of that, just be that guy in the locker room that raises everybody up. And I think he did all that. I don't think he's probably getting enough credit for doing all that. Instead of, he could have pouted, he could have been frustrated, he could have been embarrassed. But instead, Tyrese, who is the ultimate WWE storyline guy, I guarantee you, he had that tweet probably queued up, just waiting for the photo, almost heading into Paris, because he knew what was going to be asked of him.
Okay, the other side of it in terms of the Pacers represented in the Olympics, now that we take a look back on it, and Scott Agness joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line from Fieldhouse Files. Scott, that would be Andrew Nembhard. Now, you saw Jamal Murray come out and go, look, man, this guy's flat out underrated. He is just underrated. Does that go out the window now? Is Andrew Nembhard now officially on alert among the rest of the NBA about what he can do, and does the spotlight focus on him even more game to game?
Yeah, I think the spotlight will definitely be on him more. I think it just depends on what his role and what is being asked of him, right? Because going into last season, he was expected to be the backup point guard, to get those minutes, with the ball to be much more in his hands, much like it was in college. And then he outplayed that role. It got to the point where you couldn't take him off the floor. So, yes, I think absolutely the coaches and the scouting report, they're going to know much more of what he's about. And I don't think that's because of Canada. I think that's because what he did in the postseason when he hit the game winner to keep the Pacers' hopes alive there in the Eastern Conference semifinals, for example. It's those moments that really helped establish himself in this league. And then on top of that, I guarantee you his fellow players saw the contract extension that he signed, and if they weren't paying attention, now they are.
Is there a reminder to the rest of the league, be it from a overall value standpoint of what he can be with guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jamal Murray, just praising Nembhard in so many different ways throughout this run, that his perceived value aside from the contract amongst his peers has now gone up? Because I mean, we're not watching every single soundbite or quote that happens over the course of the NBA season, but to have two true bona fide stars in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jamal Murray praise him the way they did, go out of their way to do that, I think was eye-opening for a lot of people, just how valued Nembhard is, not just in the locker room for the Pacers, but league-wide.
Yeah, because they aren't one of him, right? They're just playing with him for a month and a half throughout the season. So I think that's what's really cool for him, because normally, basically, he lets his game speak for himself. Now, he doesn't lack any confidence, and I think we see that occasionally when there's maybe a dust-up or he doesn't like how someone treated something or whatever. He doesn't lack confidence. I think this only adds to perhaps that and more what others externally believe of him. And again, we talk about Tyrese trying to bring players here. This doesn't hurt the Pacers either. The fact that Nembhard goes on Team Canada, owns and embraces his role, exceeds it really, quite frankly, getting about 20 minutes per game, and probably will be a potential threat to move into the starting lineup. Once you come around the Olympics in 4 years, who knows? That's a long time away. But I think that's another thing, if you're a Pacers fan, you got to be encouraged by the respect from the peers. Could potentially, help seal the deal down the road if a guy not only seeds Nembhard and Siakam, and they got Tyrese Halliburton. This is a likable bunch that is now, there's raised expectations, no doubt about that. And now they got to go out and back up that noise and really have a strong season this upcoming year.
Scott, look, I realize 4 years is a long way away, but I was watching yesterday and I'm thinking to myself, barring injury, obviously, you got to feel pretty good if you're a fan of the French national team, right? I mean, moving forward, right?
Absolutely. I mean, just look at this last NBA draft. Wasn't it like 6 of the top 10?
That's what I mean. Like, could this be a rivalry with the
players.
United States? You know what I mean?
I think it's already there in large part because of Rudy Gobert, who had not much of a role during this run for France. It's all related to Wemby. And I loved everything he said post-game, which was basically like, you better look out. Are you talking NBA or FIBA? Yes. It's like, yeah, this is a guy, you could just see it, how badly he wanted to win this. And he's going to elevate everybody's level. And you knew going in, France would be one of the contenders. I did not think they would make the gold medal game, Jake, mostly because they did not play well at all leading up to it or in the group play round. But then they put it together and figured it out. In contrast to that is Germany did not. They were really making noise in the first couple of weeks here going into it, and then come medal round just did not impress and ultimately did not medal in all of this. But when you talk about USA, obviously everybody else is elevating their game and reaching that level, and I think you can clearly say if the Team USA did not have their powers, talking LeBron, Steph, and KD, I'm not sure they're gold medal winners.
Scott, it is August of 2024. Give me the month and year that it will be when it is universally accepted amongst basketball fans that Victor Wembanyama is the best player in the NBA.
I think after 2 more seasons. So let's say September of 2026.
Okay.
Or no, let's change that. Let's make it June of 2026. So after 2 more seasons.
And at that point, he'll be what, like 23 years old?
Right. And that's the scary part because he's already, I'm not sure he wasn't Defensive Player of the Year last year. I don't understand how Rudy Gobert is almost like the default vote if you aren't paying attention, I guess. But he's already got it on the defensive end. It's can he put it together offensively? And then also what does his team look like? Because a lot of voters aren't wanting to give big votes on a player on a losing team or to use your old thing, right? The 20 and 20 type guy, but we know he is much more than that. Do you know how much it warms
my heart to hear you reference the 2025 guy?
That's your thing, and it has been probably that I know of for like 15 years. No joke.
So long as you give me full credit. And then the next is TJ Maxx contract. You can use that as well, TJ Maxx contract. That's also trademark.
I'm gonna go September of 25. I'll go a season earlier with the confidence that Victor Wembanyama is putting out there and another step forward for him. But yeah, Scott, you're exactly right. He's coming for certain. He's on the horizon and is going to take this league by storm. It's just a matter of how soon. The other player that has fringe ties to the Olympic basketball that we just saw, and this is admittedly a bit glass half full outlook, but we talked about in 3 months with Tyrese Halliburton. Are we looking back and saying, man, maybe he shouldn't have been out there if he's still having complications with injury? What is the upside, or what is the glass half full look at the idea of Benedict Mathurin coming off an injury, being involved with Team Canada training camp, but ultimately not being a part of that roster for injury reasons? What is the glass half full look of him instead getting that rest and getting an opportunity to focus on his upcoming campaign this year?
Yeah, Jimmy, I really like the fact that Team Canada involved Benedict, brought him to Toronto for their pre-training camp. Canada did a lot longer of a lead-up than Team USA did, which gathered in Vegas, I think, around July 6th. I think Canada was together by like June 20th before the draft. So they went a little bit longer, but that first, let's call it 10 days or so, you had him and Shaedon Sharpe, both with injuries, both up there, but not involved physically. And I think that's probably the best thing for him because it's like, here, look, but guess what? You can't participate. We need you to get you healthy, and here's what you aspire to. And there's no doubt I don't think that Mathurin would have been on that team. But again, much like Nembhard or even Tyrese, there's so much value in just being around, seeing how those who have done it before you train and do things a little bit differently. Just like we're probably seeing with here locally, the Colts and other teams when they have joint practices. You see from someone else's vantage point, and you learn maybe a little bit better process or how you can train a little bit better that you can add to your own routine. Because right now, Ben now is coming to a point where he's ready for a breakout season, I think, and he's got to put it a little bit more an entire body of work together. We know what he can do individually. We know he can get to the line, and that was something they missed in the postseason last year. And I think the important thing for him during the regular season last year was playing within the framework of team and the framework of what they were trying to do to make the one extra pass, to go and get the rebound and make that extra effort. And so him being out for the playoffs was one thing, and then him going with Team Canada but not being able to participate was another. And we even heard Kevin Pritchard about a month ago in Las Vegas saying he was nearing being fully cleared, which is an exceptional thing because he's about 2 months ahead of where they expected him to be based on his surgery in March.
So what's next on the calendar here, Scott, in terms of your coverage for the Pacers? And then, I would assume basically everything's done and we're just in a waiting, almost dead period until everything resumes with their camp, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, Tyrese is going on vacation. Nembhard's probably already there. Coaching staff and execs. That's what right now is about. That's why so many weddings in the NBA happen at this time of year, including Jalen Smith, the former Pacer, got married a couple weeks ago. But right now, you're going to have the schedule out this week, I think, Jake. You've already had the leaks come away from that. You already have some of the preseason schedule. I think I have 3 of the 4 dates that have already been announced by the opponent up on my site right now. And for me individually, it's about playing catch up and probably getting to some features I haven't had time to. For example, I talked with Chris Wilkes in Vegas. He was with the Pacers in the camp leading up to it, but this is a guy who thought his career was over, and now he thinks he's in as best shape as he can, and he's worked through his situation to get back on the court and trying to make a training camp roster. Talked with Caitlin Clark about how she's spending this offseason, this break, which I think has been so valuable. And then over the weekend, up in New York with the Yankees, and they were talking about how they were shell-shocked and in awe of Caitlin's presence, and these are baseball players. So that's what it's a lot about for me right now, is probably finally having some time to devote to longer features that have been in the works for a while.
Do you think that there will be case studies is probably too strong, but I saw Asia Wilson of the Aces make a joke about, oh, here comes the nice Olympic/All-Star break, because, she's out there going to win a gold, and it's literally back nose to the grindstone now. Will we start to see a culture shift within the WNBA of how compact the schedule is? I know it's once every 4 years, but that was the pro that we mentioned for Caitlin not being on that team. Of course, would have loved to have seen Caitlin Clark be there, but she gets this rest. She finally gets a break. Do you expect that to be at all monitored by the WNBA as a whole, looking at players that were a part of Team USA versus how they look with the immediate jumpstart back in?
Yeah, it's one of those where it's a pro that these players are in shape and ready to go and didn't lose anything, but at the same time, they were not beneficiaries of this extended break, and the Fever more than anyone needed it. But take a look at the Fever. They have a player in Christy Wallace who's kind of out of the rotation almost right now, was the only player involved in the last month. So the rest were able to get that break, were able to come here, and I think they've had a lot of good work over the last 2 weeks, Jimmy, both serious and not on the court. I think that's something that Christy Sides really made it an important note to have some fun here. And then one of the best things was having a mini home run derby on the practice court, which I love Caitlin's response, who's uber competitive, goes, "I won, of course," with a little side eye. Now, for those players involved, though, Jimmy, yeah, you're frustrated because you're saying, hey, I just gave my all to my country. We won the gold medal. I mean, their chartered flight's probably back, today? And then they fly to their home city of where they're playing basketball. They get 2 days before their first game. Fever resume on Friday. That would be the frustrating element. But I think it's one of those that the players look at it as a sacrifice that you're willing to make in order to be part of that team, and that outweighs anything else.
If you were an Olympic athlete, would you stay for the closing ceremonies if you were done, let's say, 1 week before? Jimmy, you go first, yes or no?
Yes, I would.
Scott?
I think my first time.
Yeah,
it would also depend where the Olympics are. Like Paris for another week? Yeah, absolutely. Let's go.
Yeah,
if I'm a LeBron where I'm going regularly, I don't need to go for all four, but I think my first time I would do anything and everything to soak in the moment, knowing I may not be back.
Yeah, I wonder if okay, here's one for you. Let's say that you were in the Olympics and let's say that you were like Michael Phelps. You were in all kinds of different, events for different Olympics. And you started out right out of the box and you got a bronze in your first ever event. And then you started winning gold and you won gold. In your last event, in the back of your mind, deep down, would you be like, it'd kind of be cool to get a silver just to have the hat trick?
No, I don't think so.
Absolutely not.
I think once you've tasted gold, that's all you want, man.
Those, the one disappointing thing, those medals are kind of ugly. Is it wrong of me to say that?
The Paris ones?
Yeah.
See, I really like them because, like I told you a couple weeks ago, it has a piece of the Eiffel Tower.
Well, that's cool.
I think that's
sure.
really neat.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Any of them are gorgeous.
Right.
I mean, don't get me wrong. But, we think of the medal as just being like the same medal all the way. The ones, I think it was, Scott, which ones did Tamika Catchings win? There was one of them, I remember her coming back, and it was a really weird-looking medal.
She won so many of them.
I know.
It's hard to know. She won 4 gold medals. My most memorable one, I feel like, was the Athens. Maybe it was I'm guessing it was the London maybe that stuck out to you. I could see London with the bridge, and
there was one that. Look up which years Tamika Catchings won gold, Jimmy. Maybe it was
she was 4 through 16.
Maybe it was the World Basketball Championships, but there was one that it literally just looked like a recycled hunk of metal. Like it wasn't like flat. It's hard to explain.
I get what you're saying about the aesthetic of these medals, but just for your statement on it, is it because of the Eiffel Tower blob
groove,
in the middle?
The groove
or is it the grooves on the edges
it's
that bother
the grooves that I don't.
Because it's
still a huge
it's
fan
set
of.
apart
they're
for me
all
because
awesome. Don't get me wrong.
It's set apart for me because you're getting a piece of an iconic wonder of the world in the medal. I think that's really cool.
I mean, that is very cool, for sure. Got to be the most famous structure in the world, right? Or top 5?
Yeah.
All right, Scott, anything you want to add to this conversation?
I think we just about covered it.
That's right. We got it all in there, right? One more time. Tell us what's next now in Fieldhouse Files.
Yeah, so my most recent piece was something with Kyle Guy talking about his retirement, what went into that, which was kind of sudden, right? Very young, just celebrated his birthday. But upcoming, I'll have a one-on-one with Andrew Nimhard. I'll write about Tyrese Halliburton's experience, and then again get into what Caitlin Clark and how she maximized the last couple of weeks without basketball.
All right. We look forward to reading it and always appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon, all right?
All right. Thanks, guys.
Scott Agness joining us on the Express Pro Tire and Autos guest line. I'm looking here at the Olympic medals by year. I want to say, what were the games? Okay, so you said 04 for Tamika. Was that Athens?
Yes.
12 was London, right?
Yes.
Where was 08?
Beijing.
It was Beijing. Look up the Beijing medals. I remember her coming back from that one, and I just remember thinking it wasn't like perfectly round, maybe is what I'm thinking of. I don't know. She won so many of them, and Tamika Catchings would, the Beijing doesn't look terrible.
Is it the back of the Beijing gold that bothers you? Are you looking at the side that looks like kind of a gray circle-ish look at it?
The medal that she had, and maybe it wasn't an Olympic medal. I remember she won a medal and came back, and it looked like a Star Crunch. You know what Star Crunches are? The Little Debbie Star Crunches? Like it wasn't smooth. It was just like a haystack or a no-bake cookie. It was like it wasn't flat.
Was it London? This one?
I think that might be it. Is that London?
Yes.
Yeah, is it kind of like
it's got
funky?
A lot of patterns.
Yeah.
Going on at the front of the medal.
Just be flat, right?
Remember Rajiv Ram, when we had him on last week, said he preferred the Paris over the Rio gold or Rio medal that he got.
That's right. What did the Rio look like? Was it cool?
It looked pretty standard. Like it looked like the type of gold medal that you would have appreciated. It just had Rio 2016 on there.
Certainly, it is cool to be able to pay homage to wherever it was that you were participating, for sure. The Olympics are really special. There's no doubt about it. I mean, just the...
Can I give one more shout as well to Gold Zone? Like, Peacock and their coverage of making everything incredibly accessible. NBC is their parent. I guess Comcast and their parent company. You get what I mean? NBC and that whole network. I really enjoyed all the coverage they did and how, for once, streaming didn't feel like a burden and it felt like something where you could get what you wanted for, all walks of individuals wanting to experience the Olympics. But Gold Zone in particular, to make you feel like you had every medal at your fingertips at any given moment, that coverage across the board with Andrew Siciliano and Scott Hansen, I thought was great. I really thought they hit it out of the park. And I don't have them in front of me, but from what I had seen and read, the numbers reflected that in terms of a viewership standpoint across the board for the Olympics.
And NBC in general, I mean, let's give credit where due. Mike Tirico is very smooth.
Oh, yeah. He's one of the best.
I mean, he's very smooth at just being able to navigate you from one area to the next. Jimmy Fallon, I'm not a huge fan, but
Maria Taylor did a good job, too.
Yep. Shout out to Noah Eagle as well on the basketball side. Here's the Rio 2016 medal, Jake. So it's kind of just, it looks pretty simple. Like it has the logo on there of the Olympic Games and a couple patterns here and there, but nothing too crazy.
All right, here we go. I'm pretty sure I found it here.
Okay.
The 2002 China World Basketball Championships. I'm almost certain that's the medal I'm talking about. I'm going to look it up, and we're going to resolve this mystery next. was asked, it comes up about every 4 years, and that is, and I will do it in trivia form for the two of you gentlemen. My name is Jake Query, by the way. Eddie Garrison, Jimmy Cook, the other two voices you hear on this program. It's the Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan. But typically, somebody asks this every 4 years because it's a really good question. Hey, how much gold are in gold medals? Eddie Garrison, I will begin with you. Would you believe that the gold medals are solid gold or gold-plated?
Gold-plated.
I'll go solid gold.
Okay. One of the two of you is correct.
Figured that's the way that it was presented.
Yeah.
It is, in fact, gold-plated. Now, would you
Well
like
done,
to
Eddie.
guess
Good job.
92.5% of the medals are what metal?
Silver.
Jimmy? I mean, it could be anything. It could be aluminum, could be alloy, could be steel.
We'll go bronze.
92.5% of the medals are pure silver.
Well done, Eddie.
The first place medals for the Paris Olympics contain 6 grams of gold plating and weigh 529 grams total. Now, somebody posted a picture of, I believe, a bronze medal that already was tarnishing.
Really?
Yeah. Now, bronze does tarnish, right?
Probably
Yes,
because of the Eiffel Tower.
What's that?
Probably because of the Eiffel Tower.
That's right. The bronze, if it's oxidized, that's what it turns green, right?
Correct, yes. That's why the Statue of Liberty is green.
And that's why they take down Miss Liberty on top of the Soldiers and Sailors Monument and scrub that thing down and send it back up. Do you know why? Do you know why the Miss Liberty or Miss Indiana, depending on who you ask, but the statue atop the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, do you know why? Do you know which direction it faces and why? Eddie Garrison?
No, and no.
Jimmy?
I do not know.
The Soldiers and Sailors Monument, while in recognition of Indiana soldiers to fight in different wars, each side of the monument itself shows a soldier in the 4 variations of war, getting ready for war, leaving for war, fighting in war, and returning home from war. But one of the wars, as on each side of it, it has 1861 on one side and 1865 on the other. It recognizes the Civil War, and the statue atop is facing to the south as a peace offering from the Civil War. So if you are ever lost in downtown Indianapolis and you don't know which direction you're headed, if you are within eyesight of that, thank you, Eddie, you can look there, and that will tell you they're heading south. Or you can simply figure out the fact that if the numbers are getting larger, then you are moving away from Washington Street. If they're getting smaller, you're moving towards Washington Street.
Educate and entertain, baby.
Thank you. Likewise, if you're moving east and west, it is Meridian Street, thus for its name, that is the east-west divider of the city of Indianapolis. There you go. Yesterday, Anthony Richardson threw, 4 passes?
Yeah, 7 plays.
We learned a lot in that last segment right there with my
I was
brain
the
dropping. Did we
closest.
learn a lot about Anthony Richardson?
I was the closest with the prediction of the snaps.
I forgot we did that, didn't we?
I said 12, is that right?
I said 7. Or I said 8.
I think I just set the over-under, and you were both arguing whether or not 11 or whatever was
I
too
thought you
much.
said 12. I thought you said 12 and you said 11. I could have you 2
That
flip-flops.
might be right. But either way, it was 2 series, right?
Yeah.
I was surprised, quite frankly, we didn't see more of Joe Flacco.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess you kind of know what
he gets
got there,
grandfathered
right?
in at this stage of being the established veteran.
Literally.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I wasn't stunned by that aspect of it. I mean, my bar has been pretty low throughout this offseason for Anthony Richardson. Get healthy to the point of when the games matter, and then we'll judge where you're at from there. Obviously, if there's glaring mistakes or over a large sample size of issues of accuracy or turnovers or bad reads or bailing on pockets too soon, then okay, yeah, maybe then you start to dive deeper and look at it and say, this could be trouble. You only got 2 series out of it. I think the mistakes that he made, either miscommunication or an overthrow from Kylan Granson, and then throwing it, strangely enough, behind Granson, 2 targets of him in those 2 series, those are both fixable. They're adjustable. I was fine with the performance. Maybe I'm reaching too far here, Jake, but I said at the start of the show, I got a little antsy when he took off to run, just because, okay, here we go. He's doing it. First run post-injury. Let's see how he looks. And he could have fought for an extra 4 or 5 yards and lower his shoulder into defender if he really wanted to in a meaningless preseason game. But he didn't. He took the yard, worked really hard for that 1 yard, but he took it. He ran out of bounds, and he lived to fight another day. Maybe I'm reaching a bit there, but that is the type of decisions I want to see from him for his overall health, is that situationally, sure, sometimes I do want you to dive for the pylon and go get a touchdown, but if it's the second quarter, live to fight another down. I don't need it to be all superhero every single time. Am I going too far there, or is that a potential observation of
I think it's fair.
the maturation of the position?
No, that's fair. The observations I had, number one, I think Liatu Latu is going to be a really good player.
Yeah.
And I said it earlier. I think he's going to be he could be a difference maker for them, and a guy that you've got to pay attention to if you're the opponent at all times. A.D. Mitchell playing in the slot, the wiggle, the burst, etc. Who knows? But clearly, as of now, it looks like that he is going to be a guy that is going to get some rep until Josh Downs comes back at that position. But we'll see when Downs is able to get back on the field. I thought Gould, who was a late draft pick out of Oregon State, did a nice job in the return game and showed that he, may have the ability to get on the. What you want to do when you are especially a fifth or later draft pick is you simply want to show that there are ways that you can, more ways than just one in which you can contribute on the field.
Give
right?
them many reasons to wince if they thought about cutting.
Correct. That's exactly correct.
Yep.
And I think he did that, right?
Yeah.
I was encouraged by that. And then you said that we have a pronunciation clarification. Eddie, is that right?
Slukwa.
Derek Slukwa. Sneaky. Not a
Sneaky
lot of
on the
people talking about
pronunciation
him.
or sneaky on the play?
All of it.
Okay.
Hanging out, didn't want to burst on the scene too quickly. Slukwa, just give it time. Just matter of time. Don't pay attention to the fact that he only had one target and he didn't make a catch. Just don't pay attention to that.
It's early.
Now, did you also see the AP Top 25s out in college football, the preseason poll?
I did take a quick glance at that.
I'm going to read off for you in groups of 5, and you tell me the one team that least belongs and the one that you're like, yeah, I'm cool with them. I'll go with the AP not the coaches poll, but the AP poll. Iowa, North Carolina State, USC, Kansas, Arizona, and Texas A&M. That's 25 through 20. Texas A&M is the one every year that gets ranked high, and then by November they've got 5 losses, right?
What are we? That started with Iowa, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing with Iowa? Like, we know what they are. They're generally speaking, I know they made some changes in the offseason. They're generally a middling offensive team.
Iowa is the benchmark for what Indiana and Purdue both should ever aspire to be, which is always competitive, and then every 3 or 4 years when you have a senior-laden team, win 10 or 11 games, get excited.
That blueprint goes away, though, with no more divisions. The days of Iowa being, oh, hey, look, we made it to 4 Big Ten title games in 8 years. Those days are done.
NC State, give NC State credit because they went out, and when they had a coaching hire a couple of years ago, they went out and got the guy, Dave Doran from Northern Illinois that's done a really good job, solid program. Kansas is the one you're like, really? If Kansas can get ranked,
expectations from them.
No,
this year.
I know, I get it. If Kansas can get to that point, then Kurt Cignetti in Purdue, or Kurt Cignetti in Indiana, or Ryan Walters in Purdue get hope because Kansas was the worst of the worst. All right, next grouping: Miami, Kansas State, Oklahoma, and Tennessee.
Out of ignorance, this is true ignorance, I would probably say Kansas State.
Kansas State's the IKEA of college football programs, right?
Yeah.
Looks nice. You get up close to it, and you're like, the stadium's like all aluminum. They just feel poser. They've got like their uniforms are kind of weird USFL looking logo. I think they stole their logo from Lawrence North. I realize it's the other way around. Tennessee's going to be really good, by the way. They have a great roster of quarterbacks. Tennessee's going to be good. Watch. Next group in Clemson, LSU, Utah, Missouri, and Florida State.
Probably Missouri, but I feel like I always have some prejudice to them as the conference realignment mover before all the conference realignment of being in the SEC. So maybe Missouri.
I love Clemson, but I think it's over for Clemson, by the way.
Over as in the days of them being a dominant pillar, or over as them being
the days of their dominance, because you cannot be so against the transfer portal and NIL in today's world.
Don't sleep on Brady Cook, quarterback for Missouri, by the way.
Where was he before?
I don't know. He's been there for a couple of years. He had a really good year last year.
Florida State, I think, is going to be good, too.
I worry about their quarterback situation.
Uyunglele?
Yep.
Big. Again, I go back to with DJ Uyunglele. how you got there and where you came from, as the number 1 overall recruit in the country, disappointment at Clemson, but then was really good at Oregon State. So we'll see what he does at Florida State. They got completely hosed last year. All right, next grouping, Michigan, Penn State, Notre Dame, Ole Miss, and Alabama.
Isn't it have to be Michigan just off the reeling of the allegations
You
and the
would
4-year
think.
show cause
You
and
would
everything
think
else?
that's got to be tough for them. And how about Michigan? Jim Harbaugh's going to be our honorary captain. He just got a 4-year show cause and can never coach again, but that's cool.
Do we know if he's allowed to be there? Do we
That's
know
a
if the
good
NCAA
question,
isn't sending?
It's Penn State, and it's always Penn State. They're always ranked high to
Same
start
with
the
Ole
year,
Miss.
and
Ole
then they
Miss
just
and Ole
crumble.
Miss and Penn State right now should just go ahead and play for that 12th spot for the right to get blown out
But hey,
in the opening round of the expanded playoff.
They have Tom Allen now, so that's the difference. That's what's going to put them over the edge.
Okay, the top 4, Texas, Oregon, Ohio State, and Georgia. Man. Georgia, man. Texas, I'll be curious about. Texas is another one every year. They get to the point towards the end where high expectation, and I've always kind of liked Texas personally.
I feel like you've seen a clear, and it's easy to say this with Saban now out the door, but you've seen that clear baton pass of the dominance of what Georgia has been the last 4 or 5 years to them being the powerhouse of college football. And for me, I'm curious to see, I know I went out of order here, but Bama's just outside that top 5. What does the post-Saban era wind up being for Alabama? Is it just, hey, they're Alabama, they have all these resources, DeBoer's a great coach, it's going to be fine?
Or you just assume they're going to be great because they're Alabama, right?
Right. And then how does I know this doesn't matter for on-the-field performance, but how does the national media, the viewer, and the consumers take a step back from Bama if that does happen? How much pressure is on DeBoer's? I'm fascinated by that aspect.
It feels
of it.
like Ole Miss is 6th because the thought is, well, if Alabama slides, Ole Miss is right there ready to pounce. And I'm like, it's Lane Kiffin. They're going to do Lane Kiffin things, right? Hey, Jake, how in the world did Jimmy Cook guess solid gold when he also told us the factoid that it has a piece of the Eiffel Tower in it?
That's fair. That's a good point. By the way, I do want to give an apology as well. David Lauk, athletic director of Roncalli, reminds me that his son, who I do admire greatly, Trevor Lauk, is at Iowa. So I didn't mean to fully disparage against that. I know that was on me. I'll wear the egg there. I didn't mean to fully disparage.
You know the
against
3 letters
Hawkeyes.
that are on the Iowa helmet?
Give me that. What is it?
You know, Eddie? I'll tell you on the other side, and we'll also get Jimmy's plays of the day next.
Today's plays of the day brought to you by Greenfield Signs and Lighting. Greenfield Signs, a professional comprehensive sign company with 2 locations in central Indiana. They'll take your sign ideas and take hold of the project from design to delivery. Family-owned and managed business for more than 4 generations. You don't always get a second chance to make a first impression. Make a great one with the fine folks over at Greenfield Signs and greenfieldsigns.com. All baseball plays today. We'll take the Boston Red Sox to win on the money line over the Texas Rangers. We will also take the Milwaukee Brewers to win on the money line over the Los Angeles Dodgers. I usually don't like to play baseball bets when the favored odds are greater than like minus 180. The Yankees I wanted to play tonight at 1.5 because they're playing the White Sox. But
Holy crap.
I'd rather have a better value place. We'll take Aaron Judge to homer tonight. That at plus 150. Eddie, any plays for you?
Those are terrible. 150?
He's been automatic, man. It's not
That's
your
horrible.
typical plus 400, but it's as good a bet as you're going to find when it comes to Yankees
I would
offense.
almost rather take his total bases.
Are you going to make that for your play of the day?
I don't know. I'd have to look at it.
Okay.
Who's on the mound
Okay.
and whatnot.
All right.
So no.
All right. Any plays for you?
No.
Okay. All right. Those are your plays of the day.
By the way, the Guardians and Brewers in our race for beer down to a 1.5, Jimmy.
So it wasn't the Marlins that closed the gap when you mentioned that to us over the weekend. They're not.
No.
They're not coming up the rear. No.
Eddie's
Okay.
Marlins have not
Okay.
closed the gap.
Okay.
The football helmets for the University of Iowa have a 3-lettered sticker on, I think it's either the top of the helmet or the back of the helmet. ANF. You know what that stands for? A-N as in Nancy, F.
I do not.
America needs farmers.
That's nice.
It's been on their helmet forever. I think the Hawkeye logo is pretty cool. Iowa's got cool uniforms.
You were messing with me and Eddie mentally. We were staring at the Iowa logo for a solid 3 minutes during the break. Like, man, is there like just the
Hidden
FedEx
letter in
arrow
there?
just
No.
hidden in there? Okay, all right. So it's
Now-
on top of the helmet. Okay.
I have a theory about Iowa. Is Iowa and Minnesota. I have a theory. Now, this might not be as true for Purdue because of Minnesota, because they've had some wacky football games over the years. And I mean this respectfully. I also understand Minnesota, Purdue basketball-wise, there are some bad memories there. But Iowa in particular, to me, has always been the Big Ten program that if you were to survey all the other programs in the Big Ten and say, if your team can't win the Big Ten title and you had to pick another one to win the Big Ten championship, give me the one that would least bother you, where you'd be like, yeah, it's fine. I think Iowa would get amongst the highest votes. Fran McCaffrey's a little bit bonkers, but like football-wise, I mean, Kirk Ferentz, I think people like him.
Yeah.
They're boring, but, you know, I just think Iowa just comes off like a decent athletic program all the way around.
Unless you're super angry about the lack of like high-scoring offense, there's no real reason to hate Iowa football.
Correct.
Like, there's not an inherent.
Correct. I mean,
Negative
you
too.
got the thing with the kids' hospital now,
it's
although
awesome.
the wave goes a little long. I know it sounds weird, but like I've had people that have gone to it and they're like, it's an awesome gesture to turn around and wave to the kids, but after like a minute, you're kind of like, okay, like how long do we go here? It's kind of awkward, I think, but it is a very cool gesture for sure. And Iowa's a very underrated state, and if you've never been there, you got to get made rights, the sandwiches.
You're big on the made right sandwiches.
I'm telling you, Hy-Vee is nice.
Hy-Vee's
grocery
great.
store
I
is
love
great.
Hy-Vee.
When Hy-Vee comes here, is that ever happening? Do we know?
Right after the PBR
JV's
party,
here, he'll know.
it'll be there for certain.
When is Hy-Vee going to open in Indianapolis?
Man, I thought it was going to be around Whitestown and Zionsville.
Like 5 years ago, right? But they,
Like
aren't
5
they?
years ago.
They're arguing over where, right?
Yeah, I think Whitestown and Zionsville argue about everything, don't they? Don't they
Yes.
just like piss and moan at one
Yes.
another all the time about stuff?
Lebanon just sits and watches it all happen.
Kind of like where Noblesville and Fishers meets up there by Britton Tavern. They used to argue about that area too.
Right.
I think.
So what's going on in the big program today?
Man, I am ready to go. Yesterday was boring. Wasn't it boring?
not a whole lot going on, right?
Nah, man. We've been through this before. I don't know how much you can take away from it. Latu looked like what people up there that had seen him practice after practice, how they described. And then, Anthony Richardson, 2 things you hope for is availability and him to develop some ball placement, which didn't look like it was there. It was weird. You
agree with
saw
that.
him throw a couple of passes and they were completely off, right? One should have been picked, and then you saw Flacco come in, and the first pass he threw was like right on the hands. And you just got to find some, if you're Richardson, some some tweener there with the ball placement specialty. So
I was a little surprised that we didn't see more of Flacco, but as these guys were saying, what more do you need to see from Flacco?
Yeah, exactly. Right? Who else? Abraham had a pick, right?
Yeah,
Looked
he did.
good. Yeah.
Forced fumble.
Yeah. So he looked like
I thought
he's
Gould
playing
looked-
his
I
way
thought-
on the
I thought
team.
Gould
Evan
looked good.
Hall, maybe? Is he going to evolve into a guy that Steichen can use?
Well, they were a huge fan of
Out
Holt
of the
before his
backfield.
injury, right?
Yep, and that was in week 1 last
Yeah.
year, so that didn't last very long. Trey Sermon will watch because that's a deal if you got to go out and feel the need to get somebody else. And then, right, Eddie Simmons is down in Atlanta today.
Yes.
think we're
Atlanta
past
needs
that
a
boat,
safety.
right? Like,
yeah,
I
I
think-
would think so too.
Don't
I
let
think
him out
that
of the
Chris
building,
is-
right? Don't let him leave the
Well-
building without a deal.
Oh, he's been in a
sure?
lot of buildings
I
and got
know.
out of it so far.
Are we
yeah.
even sure it's a Ballard thing? It could be a Simmons thing. Like he
may
could be
not
the one
want to.
holding
I
out.
just mean broad scale. The idea of them bringing somebody in unless there's an injury internally, I think the ship has sailed on
I
that.
do
I'm
too.
with
I
Chap.
think
It
they
would have
like-
happened by now.
I think they like what they like right here and are going to ride this thing, and we'll see what happens.
What do you got on the big show, John?
We're going to go with Stephen Holder, who did a great job on ESPN and Sports Center pretty much throughout the weekend and yesterday as well. Got some thoughts from Anthony Richardson, too. And we'll get back to basketball with Team USA. I miss the Olympics. I miss getting up in badminton and ping pong not being on, man. I love that.
They present the ball before the serve, and then all of a sudden all hell breaks loose.
No, I know it. Yeah, they're all faking and stuff. I love the Olympics early in the morning. I
That was
do.
fun.
It's
I've
great.
always said the Olympics are like World Cup in the fact that it's great to be able to get on and just you flip on the TV and there's stuff on in the background and
Now I got to go
stuff
back to watching Leave It to Beaver
Yeah, that's
at 8 a.m. now on MeTV.
I like that. I like that Larry Mandello.
Did you like Larry? He got booted off the show.
Did he?
Yeah, I think so. That's
I
when
just-
they went
I just know
to
that
they went to
whenever-
Whitey.
Well,
That's what you
Whitey got
needed at that
yeah.
point in time.
Gilbert
Whitey.
too. Gilbert got a lot
Whitey
of
and
run.
Gilbert.
Yeah,
That's when Beav got caught in that cup of coffee to see if there was coffee in that billboard sign.
that's actually that episode is what Mike Damone was
Yeah,
watching.
he was
when
watching
Rat
that
loses his wallet.
when Rat forgot his wallet.
Yeesh, I'm really kind of
Oh,
busy.
what the hell happened? No, that was a different scene, but yeah.
That was,
What
yeah.
happened?
Both of them, right?
Yep.
Larry Mandello, though, man, whenever trouble was brewing, his mom was calling him, right?
Yeah, and he always ate everybody's food.
Oh yeah, of course. So I
I
got
tell you,
booted
here's
off
the
the
one. The best one is Lumpy Rutherford.
Oh yeah, he's cool.
My man had chest hair coming out of the top of his shirt when he was supposed to be a
Clarence.
sophomore in high school.
Yeah,
I mean, Lumpy had just huge,
Dad was great too.
huge, like just a big wig coming out of the top of his button-down shirt all the time.
All right, John's up next.
Yep.
We will be back with you at noon tomorrow. Thank you for listening to Aquarian Company.